A very good morning to you. You are with Newsroom now. We'll be with you until midday. It feels a bit of us like the morning after the night before, doesn't it?
Well, remember Nenegate? Well, today is a different day. We had a cabinet reshuffle last night, and that's what we focus on this morning. The Rand has plunged by around 5% after President Jacob Zuma last night reshuffled the cabinet. He fired the finance minister, Gordhan, and 5 other ministers in a dramatic midnight reshuffle.
So, we've been asking you the question, and we want you to interact with us. What are you telling us on the question? What do you make of the cabinet reshuffle? You guys have been tweeting us, of course, lots and lots of interest in this developing story, as it were. Let's have a look at some of your tweets to our question of the day. What do you make of the cabinet reshuffle?
This one from Vusi says, it's hectic. What can we do as the public? Let's wait and see from the man above, says Vusi.
Says Vusi. That's Vusi MP. Sipo comes in, he says, a cabinet reshuffle is not a new thing. Powers have been assigned to the president. When time comes, he had his admin mustered here.
Yeah, there you go from Sipo. This one from Temba Shlaki says, I'm very happy. Big up, Mr. Zuma. EFF angry, laugh out loud.
Buyo says, no, shame our country, things are getting out of hands now, says Buyo Sogoni.
That's one from Sipo again. He is the president for the country. We must respect the decision. Let's wait and see how the new ministers will do. Then we can judge. Well, that's a sober thought there.
Sober thought. What are the markets saying? What are the markets saying? Well, the markets have been jittery for the last day or so. Actually, from Monday, there's been lots of jitters in the market. But we're also running, of course, a poll. As we do every day, we want to know, well, what do you think? What are you feeling? So the question we ask, do you support the president's new cabinet appointments is what it should read. Yes. But do you support the president's new cabinet?
The new appointees that is there, 355 votes in, 87% are saying no. We don't support the president's cabinet appointees. 13% are saying yes.
Interesting. Is that a gauge of the sentiment out there? Keep tweeting us. We'd love to hear what you think. Of course, lots and lots to be done on the show today. As you've seen the shows before, and I promise you the shows after, it's going to be reshuffle day today. At SABC Newsroom is where you interact with us. But myself, Elvis, and Kendall, let's get straight into our work.
We will not do the Harlem Shuffle, but we'll do the cabinet reshuffle. Let's take a look at your headlines. The presidency has announced that the swearing-in ceremony for the new ministers will take place at 4 o'clock this afternoon. The South African Communist Party will meanwhile discuss the axing of the former Finance Minister Gordhan and his deputy, Mcebisi Jonas, at his Politburo later this morning. And police are maintaining a strong presence in and around Sandton here in Johannesburg. This afternoon, one Uber taxi was torched and several others stoned yesterday amid an ongoing dispute between Uber and meter taxi drivers. That's all coming up in your news, but before we get there, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what to expect on the sports field. Kendall?
Gentlemen, I'll tell you what, it is sports, but the cabinet reshuffle did not affect the world of sports. It's been less than 24 hours, some people say, and the new Minister of Police, Fikile Mbalula, has already been busy.
Wanted to ask you, has Robert Marawa tweeted anything yet?
Not yet. Not that I've seen yet particular.
It'd be interesting to get Robert Marawa's reaction to that. Maybe Robert can give us a call and we can talk to him.
We'd definitely love to hear what Robert Marawa has got to say about the new appointee in the world of sports and the world of police. Good morning to you. This is what we've got for you in the sports today. After President Jacob Zuma's late-night cabinet reshuffle, meet Thembelani Mngesi, South Africa's new sports minister, replacing Fikile Mbalula. And as I mentioned just now, the Hawks have arrested former Eastern Province Rugby President Cheeky Watson, along with 3 other people for fraud in Port Elizabeth. And the match of the weekend, also billed as a potential title decider between defending champions Mamelodi Sundowns and Kaizer Chiefs, is set to bring fireworks. All this and more I'll be bringing to you later on this very big and heady news day. But for now, it's back to the main desk for the news.
Thank you, Kendall. Of course, top story this morning. The presidency has announced that the swearing-in ceremony for the new ministers will take place at 4 o'clock this afternoon. Meanwhile, the rand has plunged by around 5% after President Jacob Zuma fired the Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan in a dramatic midnight cabinet reshuffle. Home Affairs Minister Malusi Gigaba has replaced Gordhan. The rand fell as low as 13 rand 46 before recovering slightly. Zuma named a total of 10 new ministers and deputy ministers. The president says he has directed the new cabinet to work with their colleagues to bring about radical socio-economic transformation.
I've decided to make changes to the national executive in order to improve efficiency and effectiveness. The changes bring some younger MPs and women into the national executive in order to benefit from their energy, experience, and expertise. I have directed the new ministers and deputy ministers to work tirelessly with their colleagues to bring about radical socio-economic transformation and to ensure that the promise of a better life for the poor and the working class becomes a reality. The new members are the following. Minister of Energy is Kensani Kubai. Minister of Transport, Mr. Joe Maswanganyi. Minister of Finance, Mr. Malusi Gigaba. Minister of Police, Mr. Fikile Mbalula. Minister of Public Works, Mr. Nati Kleko. Minister of Sports and Recreation, Minister Tembelani Mwesi. Minister of Tourism, Ms. Togozile Xhasa. Minister of Public Service and Administration, Ms. Faith Mutambi. Minister of Home Affairs, Professor Hlengiwe Mkhize. Minister of Communications, Ms. Ayanda Dlodlo. I wish to extend my gratitude to the outgoing ministers and deputy ministers for their service to the country. I also wish the new ministers and deputy ministers the best in their new responsibilities. I thank you.
Was the president last night. Now lots of reaction coming from the public as well. So Eben, I mean, people have been tweeting us. We had Facebook messages and lots of comments.
Hundreds of them. I tell you, it's a bit of a bloodbath on social media. A lot of it is unusable, I have to add, simply because of the language being used and so forth. It shows that South Africans are very passionate about what's happening. But what we've done first up is we're trying to get some reaction from politicians, those affected. As you know, very few of them are prepared to talk at this point. Minister Bucks, the new Minister of Police, and if you look at the time, 5 hours ago, which is about 4 in the morning, Minister Mbalula tweeted the following. He said, bye, 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 Twitter, see you soon, bye, 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 bye. Many byes from Minister Mbalula, obviously.
The new police minister, and everybody was saying that Becky Taylor will take that portfolio.
Yeah, it just shows you that what do the analysts know? Because, you know, nobody even mentioned Malusi Gigaba as a possible, possible
yes,
finance
because everybody
portfolio.
was suggesting that it would be Brian Molefe.
Brian Molefe, amongst many other names. Even, of course, Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma's name was mentioned in this case, and she didn't even feature in any of these. And it's interesting discussions to be had around that. We'll talk to our analysts about that. But Musi Maimane, of course, he's tweeted as well. This was his response, the DA leader. He says, Zuma has abandoned the interest of the people, the economy and South Africa in favor of a kleptocratic democracy, whatever that is. Now, Mahitlo Mechwete. This is the man who worked with Minister Malusi Gigaba at Home Affairs. Of course, he's the spokesperson for Home Affairs. He says, all the best to Minister Gigaba in his new role. It's been an honor serving him. This one from Maitlome Trete. He's, of course, many times in our studio. Bantu Holomisa says, cabinet reshuffle, not an April Fool's joke. The UDM's reaction, the United Democratic Movement has noted President. He says, and there's a link there that you can follow for further. Mbuyise Ndlozi says, Gigaba and Malula are both a decade above the youth bracket. Both turned 46 this year, says Mr. Ndlozi. So please, the appointment is no youth affirmation. At 46, you know, I'm in that bracket as well. I see myself as youth. This one from Selo Malema, Mr. Julius says the following. The Communist Party is the biggest beneficiary of this cabinet reshuffle. And can you see the irony that's dripping off that tweet from Julius Malema? Exactly. So interesting. There's lots of reaction. Of course, there's lots of views on it, Elvis. But carry on with the news and we'll pick up the analysis as we go along.
Now, as you know, yesterday, SABC spoke to the Finance Minister, Gordhan, about the impending cabinet reshuffle, and this is what he had to say.
Well, I think what we've got to learn is how to continue to enrich our democracy and make sure that our institutions work. Secondly, remember that we are, in whatever position we have, we're there for the masses of our people and to improve their living conditions, and so that they can all have a more dignified and better life, which is what Amal Kathrana did through his 60-odd years of activism. Thirdly, that we can't just sit on our couches and expect good things to happen. We need to become active. We need to involve ourselves in good things that will improve lives, but also stop bad things, which will ensure that we don't go in the wrong direction. His life teaches us that South Africa has huge potential still to be an example to the world. We must not waste that potential and that opportunity. And for future generations, have the responsibility of taking over, but remaining active, not passive.
And finally, whether politician, minister, any capacity, it's fine. I'm saying serving the nation doesn't demand one to have a capacity to attack.
We weren't ministers when we got involved in the anti-apartheid struggle in the early 70s. And you're not a minister for life. So if you've got to work out what your conscience is, what your values are, what integrity means to you, and as long as you're satisfied that you're doing the right thing, that's fine. But those who are endangering other people's lives through their greed and through a relentless search for money in their own pockets, they must be stopped because they are destroying this country. Thank you very much.
I did indicate it was yesterday. That was actually the day before on Wednesday, remember, with the funeral of Ahmed Kathrada, where we spoke to the minister. Now, reporter Diabo Seto is on the ground speaking to ordinary people here in Johannesburg. Let's now take a look.
Yesterday's cabinet reshuffle saw a couple of changes made. One of those changes were the changes in the Ministry of Transport. Ms. Dipuo Peters has been replaced with Mr. Joe Maswanganye. This obviously impacts the taxi industry, which we are reporting from the pre-taxi rank right now. And I have a couple of gentlemen who are taxi owners, taxi drivers, who will be impacted obviously by this change. Let me find out from them what they think of these new changes. I have a gentleman in here next to me. Sir, thank you very much for making time to us. We've had a couple of changes. We know that Ms. Dipuo Peters is now not the Minister of Transport, but Mr. Joe Maswanganye is. How do you feel about this?
No, yazi ilento lena yenzekile vele Minister of Transport konje bekubani
Mr.
Dipuo Peters, yes. Reshuffling izozane bathini is after effects because kunento eningi nje present wethu the way ayenza ngakhona izinto zisuka zicake nezwe lonke yabona manje ilento bathini irent idropile and into eningi like ipetrol nokudla yonke into izokhuphuka makhuphuka lento lena kunabantu abangasebenzi wonke umuntu ongasebenzi namhlanje uzolala ngendlala ilento lento izwenza ukuthi ilizwe lingabe right the next thing ipetrol nayo izokhuphuka njengathi sisebenza nge-transport. Every now and then ipetrol iyakhuphuka. Last bathe i-tax yelento government bafake 39.6, I think so. And then ipetrol iyaphezulu abantu abasebenzi. Asazi ukuthi sisebenza kanjani. The way government yenza ngakhona. Kakhulu upresident wethu uyenza izinto ezizofavora isite lakhe necrew yakhe, understand? Angacabangeli umphakathi. Yes.
Seems like we are in a hype of business here. Taxis trying to move around, so don't be surprised by the commotion behind me. Let me find out from somebody else what they feel about this. Sir, how do you feel about reshuffle? Again, says no Transport Minister Omusha also overseer transport industry in Yamatex. Uzizwa kanjani wena mntakwethu?
Hayi mama asiphathe kahle ngoba sibona ngathi ne-rent izowela phansi and mayiwela phansi sidonza kanzima kakhulu lapha emateksini ngoba thina asimiselwanga abantu begovernment thina sizimele thina self wabona so kukhoza ukuthi nathi sizowela phansi nathi sizowa so nepetrol mayidura shokuthi ezinye kwemoto zethu zizodliwa ngebank.
Kanjani ngoba Maswangayo ucabanga ukuthi maybe angayisiza i-industry yama-taxi uMama Dipuo Peters ube engage kanjani nani eqaleni asese uminister we-transport?
Hayi angeke asize lona angenileyo angeke asize ngolutho lo afakwe njengamanje angeke asize ngolutho ngibona ngathi nje usiwisa nje ukuthi sephansi ya
What I'm gathering here is that a lot of people are much more concerned about the rate of the rand and how it's dropping down, and that how it will affect every other thing, of course, stoking inflation and all other prices going up. We do know now that Dipuo Peters is no more the Minister of Transport. Mr. Shoma Sanganyi will be overseeing places like the pre-taxi rank and making sure that this industry is faring well and it's functioning properly. We already know that we have all those problems with the meter taxi and the Uber drivers and all of that. So we'll find out how these changes are going to affect changes in certain industries such as this one.
That was Diabo Seto there on the ranks of Johannesburg. But we also got some reaction from other parts of the country. Evan.
Yeah, obviously we're trying to do a kind of reaction kind of show. As you can, this kind of news affects the whole of South Africa. Before we go to Port Elizabeth to get some more reaction, let's just take a look at our poll, because you guys are voting feverishly. Another 150 votes on top of it. Do you support the president's new cabinet? Well, the percentage points haven't changed, but the number of votes in now. 468 people have voted in the first hour of this poll. 13% say yes, we support the president's new cabinet. 87% are saying no. And yeah, some of the tweets coming in. Malibongwe Manyonya says, Newsroom, I think Mr. President made a right call. I'm happy and I support whoever appointed as the minister. Congratulations to all of them, says Malibongwe. Elvis?
This one from Lhasa says, really, I don't support the new cabinet because only Zulu is appointed. What about Pedis like Mwako Ramatlori?
Yeah, that's a different element to it. Rieta Durant says, it's shocking. What can the citizens of the country do? How you can do much. Some say there are going to be protests over the next couple of days. Yes, we expect protests today,
of course, against the appointment, or in fact the disappointment of the old finance minister, Pravin Gordhan. Sipo says, yes, yes, yes. I don't see any problem with that and with the current ministers. Let them do the job first and then we will see. Sober thought.
It's interesting. Judge them after they've done it. After. Or give them a chance to do their job. Sir, yes, I do support the president because we voted for him. So when he and his administration implementing something, why do we complain? Yes, we are in a democracy. You are right, Sipo. Interesting. What are the ones that stand out for you? What are the ones that you are really interested in? Tweet us what you think about individual appointments. If so, what do you make of Fikile Mbalula as the new police minister, Alvis? Does this mean that there are no more selfies and no more social media?
And no more selfies with beauty queens either. So we'll wait and see. But here are some viewpoints expressed from the streets of Port Elizabeth.
I think it is going to affect the country very badly because we are not going to get investments. People are going to see it's a monkey land. Because Zuma is bad guy.
It is a pity that a major decision like this has taken center stage against the background of the political instability as well as the effects it will have on our economy. It is disappointing, and I'm sure most of the South Africans are totally against it.
My personal opinion is that it's going to affect the country and the economy of the land of South Africa. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah, those are the views. Keep it coming. Now, President Jacob Zuma, if you've just woken up, President Jacob Zuma has fired Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan from that ministry. He's replaced him with now the former Home Affairs Minister Malusi Gigaba. SABC Jonas is also out as the Deputy Finance Minister, while Tourism Minister Derek Hanekom, who moved against the President at an ANC National Executive Committee meeting last year, has also been sacked. Now, the scale of this reshuffle is almost unprecedented. Nearly a third of the ministers have changed, and there are 10 new deputy ministers as well. Unprecedented. Last time such a big reshuffle happened actually was in 1996, if you can remember that far back. Now, to talk about this, we are joined in our Pretoria studios this morning by Professor Dirk Kotze from the University of South Africa. Professor Kotze, very good morning to you, and thank you for being with us.
Good morning, thank you.
Prof, the worst kept secret in South Africa for the last couple of months really is this cabinet reshuffle. It's now happened. What is your take on what has happened overnight?
Well, I think there are two main surprises. The first one, obviously, is the appointment of Malusi Gigaba. He was never in the mix, never been part of the discussion about who might be the next Minister of Finance. While there was all sorts of discussions about Brian Molefe and even Sifiso Buthelezi earlier on, but never about Malusi Gigaba. The second point, I think, which is very interesting, is that it looks like the press conference yesterday by the SACP was, in a sense, the final, last, immediate catalyst for the decision by President Zuma. He was in Cape Town and moved back to Pretoria. But ironically, it wasn't the purge of the SACP. None of the SACP ministers were actually removed from cabinet. So that is a very strange sort of combination of what we have seen here. I think what President Zuma has done is to not meet any of the predictions that have been made about the possible cabinet reshuffle. He included elements of, for example, ministers who didn't perform well, but some of them, like the Minister of Social Development, he didn't touch. But that of other ministers he removed, like Faith Mutambe, for example. Then also the ministers that criticized him, he removed Derek Hanekom, but not Dr. Motsoaledi. So again, there's not absolute consistency in what he did, and I think in the end what he tried to do was not to give ammunition to any of his critics to say this was something which was purely in order to favor the Gupta interest in government. So it was a very, in a sense, I would say almost shrewd approach that was followed by President Zuma in order to accommodate different considerations and come up with a new cabinet that was completely unpredictable.
Professor Kotze, the one name that has not been mentioned in the reshuffle and has not been on the lips of the media this morning, although before there's been lots of talk about the now former AU Commission Chair, Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, there was an expectation that she might even be named as the new finance minister. Are you surprised that she's maybe, in some quarters they say she might have declined?
Yes, that is the other surprise, that she, as well as Brian Molefe, because there was many predictions or speculations that he could be in another portfolio other than finance, but still both of them have not been included. I think the argument that President Zuma had in mind with this is to say that he wants to avoid that anyone can say to or accuse him that this appointment or reshuffling of cabinet actually was motivated by the internal ANC politics and about the succession debate and ultimately about the national conference and who will determine his successor. So by excluding Dr. Dlamini Zuma, I think He tried to avoid to be seen as becoming directly involved in the campaigns of the different candidates. But it does not exclude the possibility that he can still have another cabinet reshuffle later in the year. That is not excluded at all.
Professor, there have been talk about mass resignations from Parliament by analysts and experts. But these same analysts and experts, they also got it very wrong with regards to the reshuffle itself and the names being mentioned and so forth. Do you expect them to be wrong about this kind of, let's call it the walkout or the mass resignations that's been put forward by, let's call it experts and analysts?
I think, yes, you are in that sense correct. I think there was an expectation that there will be a major purge of SACP members, and that could have led then to sympathy resignations by other SACP members of Parliament, as well as cabinet members, as well as if someone like, let's say, Brian Molefe would have been Minister of Finance, it would have given more ammunition to other ministers to say, but this is actually not President Zuma who took this decision, but there was a hidden agenda or another agenda behind this cabinet reshuffle. Now, the way in which he now approached this cabinet is, and that's why I used the word shrewd, is that he, in a sense, balanced his appointments to some extent and made it much more difficult for that type of sympathy and resignation because it affects persons, ministers, who clearly were problematic in terms of their performance. As I said, others were not affected by it. So it was not purely a sort of a political decision-making process or appointments or reshuffling, which can be traced back to the factionalism within the ANC itself. And I think that made it very difficult to say, to accuse President Zuma of supporting the one faction in the ANC and not the others, and therefore for these resignations also.
Prof, in conclusion, what does this reshuffle mean for the tripartite alliance, and also what does it mean for the ANC heading into an elective conference in December of this year?
Well, I think for the alliance, it's not going to make much of a difference. I think the position taken by the SACP yesterday is going to be the same still. Although their members were not directly affected in that they've lost cabinet members, some of them were removed from critical positions. At the same time, the way in which they are related to the succession debate within the ANC, that hasn't changed. Kusatu, there's open support for Deputy President Ramaphosa. I think that will continue. So in essence, the status quo is going to continue with respect to the alliance, and which means that the alliance is absolutely fractured, and that there is at this stage not much of an alliance which is actually supporting the Zuma side. Most of it is supporting the Ramaphosa side. So from that point of view, I don't think we are going to see many changes within the ANC and for this national conference. This situation, it doesn't have an immediate impact on it. We will have to see how former minister now, Pravin Gordhan, is going to position himself within the ANC. He didn't play any prominent role in the ANC's internal debate about the succession. His prominence was more in relation to the Treasury and the role that he plays in government and not so much in the ANC. So we'll have to see whether this position, the fact that he's not in government now anymore, will mean that he's going to move over into being a relevant person within the ANC and play a role there in respect of the succession.
Professor Kotza, thank you very much for making time for us today. We know it's been a last-minute call for you to come in and give us your views and analysis on the reshuffle. We thank you once again for being with us here on the Newsroom Show. Thank you. Now that was Professor Dirk Kotza. He's a political analyst from the University of South Africa. Interesting what he just said. He called the reshuffle shrewd and balanced. What do you think of that? Now, let's go on social media, as you can imagine. It's been a bloodbath. Emotions running high on social media, I can tell you that. The hashtag, of course, that's Got South Africa in a bit of a spin today. Cabinet reshuffle. That's where you can go and look and see. Yes, at midnight last night, President Jacob Zuma reshuffled and reappointed ministers into different positions. Many are shocked by the move, however. If you want to know who's been appointed, the list is there. Get to know your ministers and have a look at the changes. Yes, 10 moves made. Then, of course, many are, well, tweeting their support for Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan. That the hashtag that's going around is called Gordhan. Gordhan go. Hendrik Mentz tweeted this. He says, Pravin Gordhan, thank you for your integrity and for standing so long and so bravely against what now lies ahead for us all. Whatever that means. Hendrik Mentz. This one from Bob Daniel says, Pravin Gordhan and Trevor Manuel before him and so many other talented, bright South Africans adding ultimate value but cast aside for greed. Well, these are individual views. Now, the more reaction to the cabinet changes, there's hashtags Zuma must fall and equally hands off Zuma. Yes, these tweets are circulating. There seems to be mixed reaction of the criticism as well as the lots of support for the president. There you see, of course, the BLF put out this page and statement about hands off President Zuma. They say economic liberation now. Moving further afield now, Cyclone Debbie. The aftermath has set in, but the Aussies are having a blast despite the flooding. Here you see a picture of people living in tents but relaxing on blow-up lilos. Some more flooding in the streets and even at a university, which is not stopping students from trying to attend classes there. Interesting. There was even a shark lying on one of the main roads in Australia. Very interesting what Cyclone Debbie's done there. Now, that's what's on social media right now. Let's take a look at our picture of the day. This one comes from the Queensland Fire and Emergency Services, and it's captioned. Here's this picture. Let's take this picture wide and have a look at it. Yep, that's the viewer pick. Oh, that's a pic of the day. Think it's safe to go back in the water. Think again. A bull shark washed up in air. Stay out of the flood water, they say. Yes, on one of the roads in Australia. A 4-meter-long bull shark, a man-eater, no less, found in the middle of the street. Can you try and get your head around what the cyclone has done down in Australia? Now, let's take a look at what's happening in the courts here in South Africa. We'll start in Johannesburg, where 3 men convicted of the Rhodes Park murder and rape case are expected to be sentenced in the High Court in Johannesburg. Umduduzi Lawrence Matibela, Edmond Lobo, and Tabunkala were part of a gang that robbed 2 couples in a popular park here in Kensington in Johannesburg in 2015. The women were then raped and their husbands assaulted before being thrown into the lake where they were, where they drowned there. They were also tied up, of course. Then in Limpopo, a 36-year-old man who allegedly killed his girlfriend in Tabazimbi is expected to hear the outcome of his bail application today. Police say Richard Jumper allegedly killed his partner and put a body inside a car before setting it alight. The car they were traveling burst into flames with the deceased inside. Then, down in the Western Cape, a 31-year-old suspect is expected to appear in the Mitchells Plain Magistrates Court in connection with the murder of the 11-year-old Stasha Arendse. The girl's body was found behind the SWAT Club Centre a day after she went missing from home. Now, yesterday, residents marched through the streets of Tafelsig in Mitchells Plain demanding justice for the girl and several other children who've been found murdered on the Cape Flats in recent weeks. It's a disturbing story. They even threatened to go to the house there and burn down the house of where the suspect allegedly lived in the area. The scary thing about that story is that the suspect allegedly lived two doors down from the girl that was killed. Sad times indeed. We're going to take a short commercial break. When we come back, we'll take a look at the economic outlook and impact of a cabinet reshuffle. Don't go away.
Now, President Jacob Zuma announced a dramatic reshuffle last night, axing 5 ministers. The rand is weakened around 5% against a basket of major currencies in Asian trade. That's compared with yesterday's JSE closing price of 12 rand 83 against the dollar. Now, for economic reaction to this, we are joined in studio by Professor Raymond Parsons of the Northwest University School of Business and Governance. Professor, a different slot from where we normally are, but this is very important. Cabinet reshuffle last night. Your thoughts on it? Could it be described as shrewd and calculated, or perhaps risque?
Well, Elvis, a former British Prime Minister once spoke about a week being a long time in politics. We haven't known a week like that for a while, but we've certainly gone through a week like that now. Now, whether it's a cabinet reshuffle or an election, they have consequences. They have economic consequences, particularly for South Africa at the moment. So I believe that the markets and indeed our business community will not only be looking at what has happened at the National Treasury, what are the changes there, which we'll come to, but also if we look at the cabinet as a whole, is it a better or a worse cabinet than before in terms of the challenges that we face? And we see recently there was a Stats South Africa survey saying that although there have been some improvements at the delivery level, in fact, they've said that 75% of South African households are dissatisfied with their delivery of services. So that's the challenge. And I think we must say, well, here's a new team, or at least a reshuffled team of the cabinet. That's the challenge they face. Can they turn that around as well? Mm-hmm. Then I think you look more specifically at the National Treasury, where there was a bit of a surprise, because I don't think that Minister Gigaba was on the short list of all the speculation in advance of that change. And perhaps because he has no business or financial background, so he was not on the short list. So there's a steep learning curve for him once he is sworn in this afternoon.
Mm-hmm. Now, Malusi Gigaba, Home Affairs and now Finance Minister. What does he bring to the table, you think, Professor?
Well, he brings a new face and a new approach. He's got big shoes to fill. It's important to understand that the National Treasury is an absolutely crucial ministry in our affairs. And the challenges that he faces are, firstly, we're still not out of the woods with our economy. We have a low growth rate and we're still worried about inflation. There are some green shoots in the economy which he must help to nurture. Secondly, we have the fact of the financial markets who've reacted very badly so far. We've seen it in the rand, and we'll see whether the rand will recover or not as they assess the implications. But he needs to win the confidence of the financial markets. Thirdly, there's been a team effort, which was in fact generated by the previous Minister Gordhan with business and labour, talking to our foreign investors and other investors to give them a positive message about South Africa. I think there's an important challenge for the new minister to sustain and expand that, because there are some negative noises now coming from that quarter. And finally, there's the credit rating agencies, who will be talking to us again in June. We have experienced a negative outlook on the part of all of them. We're on the brink of, in fact, junk status with some of them. And so they too will want to be convinced and persuaded by the new minister that we are doing the right thing, and that we will, by managing our economy successfully, be able to fend off junk status in the way that Minister Gordhan has been able to do.
Let's just take a look at the markets. The rand has weakened around 5% against a basket of major currencies in the Asian trade, compared with yesterday's closing price of 12 rand 83 against the dollar. Can we expect a similar reaction to that of Nene Gate in 2016?
Well, so far, although it's been quite a big knock in the financial markets, it's not been quite as drastic as it was when we had the Nene Gate experience. Why? Well, because there's been so much debate that there was going to be a cabinet reshuffle, that the sword of Damocles was hanging over both Minister Gordhan and indeed the Deputy Minister Jonas, that to some extent this reaction has been priced in, but not entirely. And the fact remains that the rand as a major price in our economy has taken quite a knock because of the political risks that are seen around this particular cabinet reshuffle.
Talking about political risk, we are looking now at international investors. That was the finance minister's job, to woo those investors back into the country. There was a sort of a wait-and-see approach to this. What does this say about political certainty right now in the country?
Well, it's quite clear that until the dust settles around this cabinet reshuffle, there's an enormous amount of increased uncertainty. But not only among foreign investors, I think also among domestic investors will want to know two things. Are we going to have a national treasury which is still fiscally conservative? Is it anti-patronage? Because there is this big and very important criticism that certain elites are being favored by our policies. So I think that's the kind of perception that needs to be changed and to be put on the table by the new incumbents to say, we are going to win the confidence of markets and of business and of the country because we will do the right thing. And it's important, I think, for our economic outlook and the fact that this uncertainty is being somewhat corrosive of our economic outlook, that we turn the situation around sooner rather than later, because people's livelihoods, people's jobs are at stake on how we deal with this.
Now, you touched on the ratings agencies a little bit earlier. Now, they were waiting for an opportunity to downgrade the country. Is this perhaps that opportunity? And should we perhaps be wary, afraid, or very afraid? And will we survive, Professor?
Well, let me answer that in two parts. The first is, as I said earlier, we will see the credit rating agencies in a few months' time. We will have to put our case to them that we are, in fact, on top of the situation, that we are pressing the right buttons, that we have got financial stability, that we will reduce uncertainty in policy instead of there being a perception now that it's been increased by what's happened. And then finally, even on a worst-case scenario, Elvis, of course we'll survive, if survival is good enough. But I think most of the viewers will say that simply isn't good enough. We've got to show the leadership that we need in order to move this economy and this country ahead. And above all, I think in the light of these shocks and these political uncertainties that have now been generated, we need to rebuild the team effort among all of us to get this country moving again and to make this economy as strong as it can be and as it should be, so that more people will be better off in the future.
Professor, thank you so much for your time and joining us here on the Newsroom. That was Professor Raymond Parsons of the Northwest University School of Business and Governance, giving us his take on the cabinet reshuffle. Let's now go over to Eben to take a look at all the social media items. In fact, no, we're going to take a look at the tweets coming through, and let's take a look at some of the comments coming through from you.
Yeah, it's me. I'm here, Elvis. They found me. They found me. Thank you for that little bit of input there, Professor. Always nice to have you with us here on the Newsroom show.
It's a pleasure.
As you can see, the Twitterati are out in full force today. Mzansi first tweets us, at last, he says, at last we have decisive leadership. Long live the revolution, long live. Well done, my president. Zuma, talking about the reshuffle. Some support from Mzansi first. Ikona Natso, one of our regular contributors, he says his motives should be questioned. Why keep Batabile if he's doing it for the good of the country? We are being fooled, says I.H. Naso. This one from Sipo, he says, he's the president for the country. We must respect the decision. Let's wait and see how new ministers will do. Then we can judge. Yes, he says, don't prejudge. Let's not prejudge. Vusi says, it's hectic. What can we do as the public? Let's wait and see from the man above, says Vusi. Sipo comes back. He says, a cabinet reshuffle is not a new thing. Powers have been assigned to the president. When time comes, he had his administration and must said, yeah. There you go. Keep tweeting us. Keep telling us what you think. It's a landmark day after an almost unprecedented reshuffle by President Jacob Zuma late last night. Only in 1996 did we have a comparative cabinet reshuffle. More than 20 years ago now. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll speak to Fidusa about their reaction to what has been happening.
African activists are using social media to raise their concerns, and industries are now utilizing video games to target new customers.
Gamification in games is a less intrusive way of brands to tell people about their products and services.
The fourth industrial revolution is also fully underway, but are Africans contributing much to it?
The majority of our people are not even aware that we're going through the industrial revolution.
On Network, we have African technology and social media news. That's Network with Ms. Phumelele Zondi, every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time.
Welcome back. You're with Newsroom here on SABC News. Of course, we all looking at reaction after an almost unprecedented cabinet reshuffle by President Jacob Zuma last night. Now, reaction has been varied and wide-ranging here in South Africa. Of course, many people have their views on what the president did last night. Of course, the finance ministry has been the focus of this reshuffle, but there were 10 changes. And 10 changes to the deputy ministers as well. So an unprecedented one. I'm here with Mr. Dennis George, who's the General Secretary of the Federation of Unions of South Africa, FEDUSA. Very good morning to you, Mr. George. Thanks for being with us.
Good morning.
Let's start with your reaction to the late night reshuffle of the cabinet.
Yeah, no, this reshuffle, a person must just take it back to Sunday evening, where we were on our way to London as a team South Africa between business, labour and government. And then this whole trip was cancelled and the minister was recalled. And what is quite sad for us to see the humiliation in this whole process. And I also saw at the funeral of Uncle Kathy, you know, that the minister did shed a tear because I think of the pressure that it's been under since he has been appointed, you know, as Minister of Finance, because he wasn't the president's first choice.
Yeah.
And in that whole process, you know, he was under attack continuously by the Hawks, by the stormtroopers of the president, you know, call him a representative of monopoly capital, white capital, and all these things. But I think through all of this, the minister did a good job. He brought the social partners together to work together to deal with unemployment and poverty in our country. And now the whole thing about this shuffle, and it's a big issue, is going to definitely damage the credibility. It's going to damage the rand. I mean, we've looked on Monday, it was 12.20. Yeah. It's standing at 13.60, and it's climbing.
Lost about 5% already.
I'm telling you, workers, pension funds money is now going to be severely affected.
Workers' pensions, you say?
Yes, the pension fund. We know when Minister Nene was replaced, it was 550 billion rands of pension fund value that was destroyed.
Wiped off, yeah.
It was wiped off, you know. So when a president makes a decision, you must make a decision in the best interest of the country, and you must also make the decision in terms of what is the best for the economy. And this decision was made irresponsibly.
I wanted to talk to you, because you've been in contact with the now former finance minister. You've been travelling with him in the last week or so. Just give us an idea, where is Pravin Gordhan at now? And have you had any discussions with him about what the future might hold?
Yes, look, I spoke to the minister last night at about 11:30. Look, I could, you know, any person would be disappointed. But I think the biggest disappointment is how his own organization, the ANC, treated him. And he was always there for many, many years to stand up for the ANC. He's a man of integrity. He's a man of values. He will not allow anything to happen to our fiscus if it's not in the best interest. And because of the values that he's standing for, that's the reason why he was removed. And the same with Minister Jonas. You know, Minister Jonas is a man of integrity. You know, it's a man that understands what was good for our country. They took a stand, they went to court, they used the processes, but because of all these things that they stood for, I think that was the reason why they were removed.
What do you think will happen now with regards to ratings agency threats and all these kinds of things that we see? And what effect do you think all this will have on the working classes in South Africa?
Look, the impact on the working classes is going to be severe. Already we have about 9 million people that is not working. We've got about 13 million people that is dependent on social grants every month. We saw the big balls up that happened now a month ago, where the Constitutional Court had to come in. But those ministers keep their jobs, you see. And that is why we say we need ethical and competent leadership to guide our country. But going forward, between now and December month, when the ANC is going to have the elective conference, it's going to be difficult because the campaigns is going to be intensifying. It's going to drive away investors because, people are looking now at my interests, not at the interests of the country. And so the situation is going to be on hold. Things are going to be tough. But I mean, from our side as FEDUSA, we want to work with government, but government has to listen. You see, if they don't listen and they do what they want to do, unfortunately, the country is going to suffer.
In conclusion, there was this whole, you were overseas at the time with the delegation when, of course, the recall happened from the investor tour, let's call it that. You were with there. There was a supposed intelligence report. What did you hear anything about this?
Look, I mean, I've been on these delegations already. For many times to Davos, we went to Washington, we went to New York. None of the people, I can give you a check, is in any way involved. Personally, myself, I'm willing to die for my country about something of regime change and stuff. It's just a hoax.
Finally, the man in the hot seat now, the new finance minister, Malusi Gigaba from Home Affairs. How do you view that appointment as FEDUSA?
Look, I think, the minister has been at a couple of portfolios. If you look how he handled the previous issue with regard to tourism and what impact that is, I'm a bit concerned because he seems to be a kind of a stubborn person. He doesn't listen. And that you saw that the tourism numbers were badly affected and until the deputy president stepped in. And we then managed to sort that problem out. So if he's not going to listen to the social partners, I'm not too sure about the future.
Mr. George, I thank you for coming in today. That's the General Secretary of FEDUSA. That's the Federation of Unions of South Africa, giving us their views with regards to the cabinet reshuffle. Thank you once again, sir. Well, we're going to take a short commercial break. When we come back, top of the hour, that's at 10 o'clock Central African time. We'll give you, more reaction from around the country, as well as more analysis as to what is a landmark day for South Africa. Don't go away.
From the moment you start your day. Good morning, everybody. It is 6 o'clock.
We are there for you.
You want a guarantee from the leadership that we should not be leaders who will steal. I'm prepared to give that guarantee that we should not steal from our people.
We bring your morning into perspective.
This is the reason they keep putting fees up. They're not getting enough money.
We'll make sure that you get the full story.
The police officers from specifically Moffat View Police Station, they support these brothels. What have you found upon your investigations on this matter?
I cannot deny those allegations.
And you can count on the weather team with expertise.
Join us live at 6 a.m. daily.
The Kalahari Transportier Park is a large wildlife preserve and conservation area in southern Africa. Kalahari means place of thirst. The total area is 38,000 square kilometers. Approximately 3/4 of the park lie in Botswana and 1/4 in South Africa. South Africa embraced the concept of transportiers linking ecological reserves across national borders. On the 12th of May 2000, President Festus Mogae of Botswana and Thabo Mbeki of South Africa formally launched South Africa's first peace park. It has 200 species of birds, including vultures, mammalians such as black Kalahari lions, and large herds of herbivores, namely elands, springboks, blue wildebeest, and more.
Did you know that Vilakazi Street is the only street in the world to have housed 2 Nobel Prize winners? Vilakazi Street in Orlando West, Soweto, southwest of Johannesburg in the Republic of South Africa, has been home to Nelson Mandela and Archbishop Desmond Tutu. Nelson Mandela's house was a modest family house from 1946 and still maintains those features. Archbishop Desmond Tutu still owns his house in Vilakazi Street since 1975 and often goes to stay there when visiting Johannesburg. Because of its popularity, the street has an influx of tourists. Restaurants with local cuisine have mushroomed around it, creating job opportunities for the locals and improving the lifestyle in the area. Orlando West High School in Vilakazi Street is known for its creative role during the famous 1976 uprising.
I'm Alicia Jali joining us live from our Johannesburg studios. A quick look now at your current news leaders. Parliament's Communications Committee has decided on 5 names to sit on the SABC's interim board. And the Constitutional Court has directed Social Development Minister Bathabile Dlamini and her department to account for their handling of the social grants contract.
And in tennis, Serena Williams has withdrawn from the BNP Paribas Open in Indian Wells and the Miami Open due to a left knee injury.
We're expecting it to move just in the towards the southern parts of the country, not so much coming towards southern Africa, not even touching the Mozambique channel. It's just going to move back towards the Indian Ocean.
Stay tuned to News Today, Monday to Friday from 3 to 5:30 p.m.
Umphakathi wexwayiswa nga200 rand imbumbulu. Kepha labanye bathi akusuye 200 rand kuphela lo inkinga.
Into sine problem nayo abo 100 rand. Labo ke ababonakali awusheshi uyibone ukuthi fake.
Iphuma phi pho imali imbumbulu?
Ahlanganise lamaphepha akamnyama afake 100 rand yamphakathi from lapha ayiclean kwavela ama 100 rand ayi3.
Can I trust you, sister?
Oh man, I'm in the business of making money. Ubese uthatha lo 100 rand lesimnike wona wawufaka emkhathini walamaphepha lamabili. Emva kwaloko uthethe stap lesimnyama wasigcobisa etikwalamaphepha. Emva kwekuyomisa le mali ubese usibuyisela lo 100 rand lesimnikete wona ekuqaleni. Uphinze wasibhanisela ngalomunye 100 rand.
Yeah, welcome back. A very good morning if you've just joined us. Yeah, we're staying a full team with you. Yeah, obviously staying with us. Of course, I'm here. Kendall is also, yeah, we're doing rolling reaction of what has been a very interesting day so far. Interesting viewpoints coming out after the reshuffle. Some of the analysts talking about the shrewd moves by the president.
Shrewd and calculated.
Fadusa talking about how much money the workers' pensions are going to lose, which is a totally different, different take on the matter.
Of course, that also links to what the economy is standing at right now and what the rand is doing. As you know, the rand actually plunged by 5% after President Jacob Zuma fired the finance minister Gordhan and 5 other ministers in a dramatic, they call it the midnight cabinet reshuffle.
The midnight cabinet reshuffle. What do you make of this reshuffle? That's the question that we put on. Of course, we've got lots of comments coming in. Let's take a few. Let's keep it clean, guys, please. We ask you keep it clean. If you don't keep it clean, we can't use it. Now, sir, a cabinet reshuffle is not a new thing here in South Africa. Why getting frustrated when change is implemented, says Sipho.
There's one coming from Andile. It says, we need young blood, new ideas, new approaches in these ministries, finance and police in our country. Well, Andile, as you also heard there, that both the new finance minister is over the age limit. They say 46 is a bit old.
My word. How can you be over the age limit? Anyhow, more tweets. This one, I want to make you mine. Crack of Dawn says, Newsroom, change always comes with fear. Let's await the outcomes. That's a rather measured view. And maybe that's what we should be thinking in South Africa, is have more measured views around these things.
Gook says, as for the new Minister of Finance, I'm not sure.
Yep, but we ask for patience. Give the man a chance, they say. Ludwig Maloko says, I disagree to his changes because he only put Zulus first so that they support him in his wrongdoing. Ludwig. That is strong stuff, my friend.
Well, Sipho comes back. He says, sir, currently we are on the top of the situation. I believe we will survive when it comes down to
downgrading. Of course, talking about downgrading. There were economists, Davi Ruetalak and others, who says a downgrade is unavoidable at this point. What do you think? Tell us, tweet us, SABC Newsroom, at SABC Newsroom. That's what it is. We're running a poll to gauge public opinion, and you guys are voting feverishly on this poll, Elvis. Almost 600 votes in.
Almost 600, 85% of those almost 600 votes says, no, we do not support the president's new cabinet appointees. 15% are saying, yes, we do support the president.
Yeah, just 2 hours in. You can keep voting on that, guys. Great to have you voting in such big numbers today. We know, of course, it is at the president's behest, a cabinet reshuffle. But we want to know, do you support that? Do you support that as civil society? And what do you think of the new Minister of Finance, Malusi Gigaba? He will be the man holding the purse strings here in South Africa, Alps.
Well, Eben, let's get down to business and take a look at your news headlines. The presidency has announced that the swearing-in ceremony for the new ministers will take place at 4 o'clock this afternoon. The SACP will meanwhile discuss the axing of the former Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan and his deputy Mcebisi Jonas at its Politburo later this morning. And police are maintaining a strong presence in and around Sandton. This after the Uber taxis were torched and several others stoned yesterday amid an ongoing dispute between Uber and the meter taxi drivers. Those are your headlines, but before we go anywhere, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening on the sports front.
Quite a lot happening on the sports front, Elvis. We know there was a midnight cabinet reshuffle, but it did affect the entire world, including sports. We've got a brand new Minister of Sports. In fact, it's one of our big stories for the day. The former Public Works Minister, Mr. Temelani, also known as Tulas.
The story that interests me, do we have more detail on Cheeky Watson's arrest?
Yes, we actually now have pictures of the arrest itself happening.
Wow.
Yes, and we're actually waiting for the details of exactly what particular charges of fraud he and 3 others are being charged on.
Interesting story.
Oh yes, 100%. The world of sports rolls on, the world of news rolls on. Good morning to you. This is what we have for you today. Now, after President Jacob Zuma's late-night cabinet reshuffle meets Temelani Nxesi, South Africa's new sports minister, replacing Fikile Mbalula. And as we just heard, the Hawks have arrested former Eastern Province Rugby President Cheeky Watson, along with 3 other people for fraud in Port Elizabeth. And in the match of the weekend, also billed as a potential title decider between defending champions Mamelodi Sundowns and Kaizer Chiefs, is set to bring fireworks. Now, should we get to the sports, this is definitely what we're bringing to you in more detail. But for now, it is back to Elvis with the news.
Yes, thanks, Kendall. Breaking news this morning. The presidency has announced that the swearing-in ceremony for the new ministers will take place at 4 o'clock this afternoon. Meanwhile, the rand is plunged by around 5% after President Jacob Zuma fired the Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan in a dramatic midnight cabinet reshuffle. Home Affairs Minister Malusi Gigaba has replaced Gordhan. Rand fell as low as 13 Rand 46 before recovering slightly. Zuma named a total of 10 new ministers and deputy ministers. The president says he has directed the new cabinet to work with their colleagues to bring about a radical socio-economic transformation.
Fellow South Africans, I've decided to make changes to the national executive in order to improve efficiency and effectiveness. The changes bring some younger MPs and women into the national executive in order to benefit from their energy, experience, and expertise. I have directed the new ministers and deputy ministers to work tirelessly with their colleagues to bring about radical socio-economic transformation and to ensure that the promise of a better life for the poor and the working class becomes a reality. The new members are the following. Minister of Energy is Kensani Kubai. Minister of Transport, Mr. Joe Maswanganyi. Minister of Finance, Mr. Malusi Gigaba. Minister of Police, Mr. Figile Mbalula. Minister of Public Works, Mr. Nati Kleko. Minister of Sports and Recreation, Minister Tembelani Ngesi. Minister of Tourism, Ms. Togozile Kasa. Minister of Public Service and Administration, Ms. Faith Mutambi. Minister of Home Affairs, Professor Hlengiwe Mkhize. Minister of Communications, Ms. Ayanda Dlodlo. I wish to extend my gratitude to the outgoing ministers and deputy ministers for their service to the country. I also wish the new ministers and deputy ministers the best in their new responsibilities. I thank you.
ANC Secretary General Gordhan has also reacted to the cabinet reshuffle.
On the question of the Minister of Finance, we had a long discussion on Monday, and the changes affected on the original package. That is what we regard as consultation. But with the list that came last night, there was no discussion. It was a list that was developed, somewhere brought and given to us. We're basically informed. So that is what it is. And if you can't influence a decision, that is not consultation.
So the question of whether the ANC supports it or not then becomes a much more difficult one at this point.
Yes, those are members of the ANC appointed to the cabinet. There's nothing against them individually. But the process of putting them to cabinet and removing some of the performing ministers and not touch some of the non-performing ministers is an issue that the ANC is raising. And the space to influence that decision was totally closed, and the constitutional prerogative of the Constitution of the Republic for the President to appoint ministers was actually invoked.
That's a very interesting statement that you make, Mr. Mantashe, because as we understand, there were at least 2 meetings of the top 6. And the question arose.
That's why I say, on the question of the Minister of Finance, which we had a very lengthy discussion on Monday about, they were consulted on some of the issues that were part of the package have been changed. That is consultation. But the rest of the cabinet changes, no consultation, was just informed.
So, given what we've seen at Ahmed Kathrada's funeral service and what you are telling us now, what sort of impact is this likely to have on the African National Congress?
Let me tell you, I'm one of the people who are actually against using funeral to fight our battles. So I don't want you to link this to the funeral of Ahmed Kathrada. There's nothing to do with it.
Well, it may be so, but the fact that a stand was taken at that funeral, at least it was perceived as such by the broader public.
Sakina, the reshuffle and the funeral of Ahmed Kathrada are two different things.
So, okay, let's focus then on the impact on the African National Congress. What sort of impact is this likely to have, given what you have shared with us previously?
One of the problem is that when things are done this way, in the environment we're in, they can easily be seen as just a fractional reshuffle that is aimed at tilting the balance of forces. That's how it will be seen. And it actually intensifies contestation and division in the ANC. That is the source of discomfort on our part.
And are you likely to act on this as an organization?
We have met yesterday. We had a discussion, we were given the list, and that's it. It's up to the organization as a body to deal with that. But all I'm saying is that we don't want officials to be dragged in and said officials of the ANC approve the cabinet reshuffle. There's no such a thing.
There you heard it from the ANC themselves, but let's explore that a little bit further with Eben and his guest, Dr. Krokamp.
Yeah, thanks very much, Jarvis. Very good morning to you once again if you've just joined us. Yes, the ANC has expressed dissatisfaction with President Jacob Zuma's cabinet reshuffle. Now, to talk about this and more, of course, I'm joined by political analyst Dr. Pretoria March here in studio this morning. Very good morning to you. I'm sure you've just listened to what Mr. Mantashe said. Interesting about there was discussion around the finance minister position, but the rest were a little bit surprised. Are you surprised by that?
No, but I think the last time that we have seen that there was some sort of a separation between the presidency and the interest of the presidency and that of the ANC was exactly the last time that Thabo Mbeki was calling the shots in the ANC. And that was the reason why he eventually was removed, because it was assumed that he's designed a sort of imperial presidency at the expense of the interest of the ANC.
Yeah.
I think we see something similar.
There's talk of this division within the ANC. How do you see this division? What is the picture that you can paint for us?
Well, it happens. It all depends on what's going to happen in the next few weeks, or even the next week. But if we listen to Gordhan, it seems like there's no deliberate effort to mobilize against what has happened and the type of monopoly that the presidency has designed for itself on authority. So nothing might happen if the rand don't collapse a lot further, if the bond markets don't collapse a lot further. It might be that many of the power players within the ANC, such as Ramaphosa, for instance, might think that we're in this for the long haul. We have a leadership election conference at the end of the year. Maybe we should mobilize ourselves and position ourselves with that in mind, as opposed to now acting directly against the president. So it's quite possible that nothing may happen.
It's a question. So you think there might be, because it's such a landmark year ahead, it could be a thing of bigger battles ahead to fight, and we'll have to make sure that we get to those battles.
Exactly, and I think the thing is, if the section that mobilized around Ramaphosa, if they want to assume power at the end of the year, if they want to take control of the ANC, they will have to think very, very carefully. Do you go via the route of removing Jacob Zuma now, or going after Jacob Zuma now, or do you go for the bigger picture? And the fact is, I think what might concern them is that Jacob Zuma has used this cabinet reshuffle to strengthen his position, not only within the cabinet, but you will also see that many of the deputies that he has chosen are relatively unknown names, and they all come, or most of them come from the NEC, which means he has, and at the same time, he has strengthened his position in the NEC, because that's his biggest fear. Remember, it's only the NEC that can remove him from power as the ANC president. So by selecting some of the individuals within the NEC to be deputy ministers in his cabinet, he's also increased the numbers or the support of people within the NEC. So I think he's moved in various power bases to consolidate his position.
We, of course, have a confirmed report here at the SABC that Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa and Gordhan himself walked out of last night's meeting, the cabinet meeting. How do you view that kind of walkout, and what kind of precedent do you think that sets in the next couple of days running into next week, as you said.
It might well be. The other thing is, I think, when somebody spoke to Gordhan this morning, he said, well, you know, it's just time to leave. The president is announcing his cabinet, and I think business has been set up. So it's difficult to say, but what I think is, again, when they walked out together, they would probably have stood somewhere in the hallway and say, okay, what next? And the bigger picture might have been more important, or they could say, well, it's possible for us to, within the next week, to start to act against the president. I think the safer option for them is the longer haul. And it looks like, if you listen to what Gordhan is saying, is as if they go for the bigger picture.
Yeah. Bigger fish to fry, as it were. I've just got a report coming in now that the DA are saying, of course, that they are now going to court to stop the swearing in of these new ministers. I'm sure it's not unexpected, but what do you think? What does that mean? And what is the game now for the opposition with regards to this?
You know, it's one of those things. I think the opposition should stay out of the fight here. I can't see any legal grounds for stopping the president to announce his or to change his cabinet, unless, of course, they go after individuals and say some of them have been compromised, they've been mentioned in the public protector's report. Yeah. But remember, none of these people have been found guilty of these things. It's all investigations, it's all mentioned in public protector's reports, etc. I can't see it. I think they're trying to get into the public space instead of really having the hopes of changing a lot of things now.
Are you surprised that the analysts, the experts and the analysts here in South Africa over the last week or so got it so far wrong with regards to the appointments, with regards to what's happened, and even with regards to the mass resignations and the storming of the castle from within?
Well, we're in perfect company. So was Gordhan last night, and so was Ramaphosa last night. Everybody's surprised, and I think it's because the president played his cards very close to his chest. He probably had one or two confidants that he shared his information with, considered the list of possible ministers and deputy ministers, but it was just one or two people they had to bring. And I think Mr. Mahlobo may have been one of them. But the fact remains is, not even the top six of the ANC knew what was going on.
There were lots of leaks in the run-up to this. Leaks out of cabinet meetings, leaks from even overseas trips, leaks from other meetings and the like. Are you surprised that there's so many leaks in this year specifically?
No, it's always been like this. I think you must remember that those who oppose the president, his enemies, will from time to time leak every information they get, and much of it might be rumor. As you see, he's played his card so close to his chest. Most of the cabinet ministers didn't even know what was going on. So, and I think if they think they're close to the fire, they like to speculate about things. It's almost like an army camp. If you really want to see chaos, start a rumor. The most absurd rumor you can start, and it will spread like a wildfire. Exactly the same thing happens with politicians when they get into the room, 400 or 500 of them, and they start speculating about what's going on in the mind of the president, especially since the stakes are so high sometimes.
Yeah. Malusi Gigaba is now the man in the hot seat, of course, and it's going to be a hot seat because I'm sure the media is going to have a field day with him over the next couple of months. What do you think he needs to do in order to, I don't know, fight for credibility in the financial space?
Well, unfortunately, we'll have to repeat the words that Pravin Gordhan has uttered, and that is that we will go for good governance, we'll go for efficient governments, we will try to save more, we will encourage economic growth. You will have to use all the words that Pravin Gordhan has used, but there are other things that he will have to do today that might give us some idea where he's going. Today is the last day for the signing of the transfer of the Habib Bank, which will give the Guptas access to financial institutions again after the four big banks have withdrawn. By tonight at 12 o'clock, I would like to have seen if Malusi Gigaba has signed that document which says the bank can now transfer ownership. If he's done that, then we know exactly where he's going. It's the last day for him to do it. I'm sure from our section world, he will get a call today saying, please sign.
That's the first test, you say? That's the first.
I think it's a big one.
The first test. I want to quickly talk about the police ministry, because here in South Africa, we're all worried about the police ministry and the policing of our streets and the safety, and we know, of course, about crime and all these sorts of things. What do you make of the appointment, then, of Fikile Mbalula in this space?
Well, it's more or less the same feeling that I had when Becky Kelly was appointed. It's a politician, it might be a grassroots politician, but of the organization and the structure of policing, they have very little understanding, and there's probably going to be a lot of politics in the policing in South Africa, and that's the last thing we need now. With Commissioner Paghlane, I think we've approached a more technocratic approach towards policing. It's important that the minister should allow that type of approach to continue. Mr. Nhleko was now removed. I'm not sure. He's a very close confidant of the president. I'm quite surprised that he was removed. But the fact is, we have another politician who might not necessarily give credence to technocratic approaches to policing.
I've got a million more questions. I'm going to ask you one more. Because of Zana Dlamini Zuma not being touched or mentioned in any shape or form in this reshuffle.
Two things. The president's only allowed to have 2 members from outside the National Assembly in his cabinet. Yeah. And as far as I know, there's already 2 people. So he will have had to remove one of those people. The second thing is, you will know that when Pravin Gordhan returned from London, he went to Lutulia House. And somewhere in the background, Dlamini Zuma was also operating. She was there. She was the only one that's from the Zuma camp that at that specific moment was walking around in Lutulia seeing Very Mantas. I wouldn't be surprised if she said, this is not the way I want to enter competitive politics. If I want to become president, this is the last possible way for me to be successful. I don't want any of this. I will enter it through another door.
You think she's respectfully declined the entire process?
I think so. She also declined to see the Guptas a while ago. So I think she's really trying to clean up the base before she operates.
Dr. Krokramp, thank you very much for joining us today. Interesting views on, well, what's been a landmark day in South African politics. No doubt about that. That's political analyst Dr. Piet Krokramp telling us what he thinks about what has happened in the last 24 hours here in South Africa. Let's go over to Elvis for more.
Thank you, Eben. Now, Parliament has meanwhile confirmed that the Democratic Alliance has submitted a request for a motion of no confidence debate in President Jacob Zuma. The motion is brought by the DA leader, Mmusi Maimane. It will be the very first motion of no confidence brought by Maimane for this year. Now, in March last year, as you can recall, Maimane also tabled a similar motion following the sacking of the former Finance Minister Nhlanhla Nene in December 2015. Another motion was also brought in November last year by Maimane. All motions have failed so far. Now, it requires 201 of the 400 National Assembly MPs to vote in favor of a vote of no confidence motion to be successful. Now, if the motion is successful, then the President, his deputy, cabinet ministers, and all their deputies must resign as provided for in Section 102 of the Constitution. Now, the economic freedom fighters, the EFF leader, Julius Malema, says that now that the President, Jacob Zuma, has fired the Finance Minister, Pravin Gordhan, opposition parties will vote in support of a motion of no confidence against the President. The Red Berets, along with a number of other opposition groups, are looking towards the Constitutional Court to order that the President faces disciplinary action for breaking his oath of office. On Thursday, the Democratic Alliance, the DA, indicated that it will table that motion of no confidence in Zuma. Now, for more on this story, we're joined in our Polokwane studios by Levi Ndo, political analyst. Mr. Ndo, very good morning to you and welcome.
Good morning to you. Good morning to the viewers.
First and foremost, I would like to solicit some reaction from you on the impact on ordinary South Africans on the cabinet reshuffle that happened during midnight last night.
Well, I think first point that we need to look at is the fact that constitutionally the president has got the powers to appoint and to remove ministers. So there is nothing wrong that the president has done, rather, in relation to the powers given to him by the Constitution. But I think one aspect that we need to look at is the fact that the president always wanted to see Minister Gordhan, or former Finance Minister Gordhan, out of office. He has done that by consulting before the ANC top 6 on numerous occasions. But one must finally say that the president's wish have been granted because he finally got rid of the finance minister. But when you look at the entire reshufflement, one would say that the president is being quite strategic. He removed the finance minister and also play around with other cabinet ministers, moving them from one portfolio to the other. Maybe one aspect that one would want to find out is that, was the reshufflement informed by performance by different ministers, or was it informed by factionalism within the ANC, or is it informed by trying to strategically put certain individuals in positions where when they move towards the elective conference, they would be in support of what President Zuma would love to see as the outcomes of the conference.
Now, in my introduction, I've indicated that the Democratic Alliance has called on political parties to set aside their personal interests and support the party in its motion of no confidence against Zuma. Do you think that this approach will work this time around as it failed previous times last year?
Well, I think one must emphasize the point or the fact that the president has got all the prerogatives. He has got the powers given to him by the Constitution to fire and to employ ministers. And I think when the motion is only coming because the emotions on the ground are quite mixed. A lot of people on the ground, ordinary citizens, are not happy with the cabinet reshufflement. A lot of members of the ANC, including those that are in leadership positions, are also not happy with the removal of Gordhan. And I think that is why the Democratic Alliance is saying maybe this time a lot of other members of the ANC are going to support the move. But one narrative that we need to bring onto the picture is the fact that it is within the hands of the ANC to remove the state president from office. And if this is not properly articulated from the ANC itself, there are possibilities that it must still fail. The ANC wouldn't love a situation where they are being dictated upon by the opposition, especially on major decisions where their president and the head of state is being removed from office.
Now, the economic freedom fighters, led by the Commander-in-Chief Julius Malema, are going to the Concord to force the Parliament to implement the recommendations of the Public Protector. Is there a link, perhaps, between the Concord and the reshuffling in this particular regard, do you think?
You'll recall that the EFF had already made a pronouncement that they will also take a chance to ensure that they also do or explore all possible means to have the state president removed from office. And I think what they're actually saying is that a Concord decision has been taken to say there has been a violation of the oath of office by the state president. And what they're actually looking for from the Concord is to say, Parliament, you need to act on the decision or on the pronouncement by the Concord to make the president accountable, and the West, make sure that you punish the president so that he must actually resign from office. And that is exactly what the EFF approach is actually coming from. But another very important aspect as well is that the EFF has vowed, ever since they came to Parliament, to say that they are going to make it very, very difficult for President Zuma to run as the President of the Republic. And that is exactly what they are doing. They are doing all they can do in order to ensure that he does not relax and he does not enjoy his presidency or his second term in office.
Mr. Ndewa, thank you so much for your time and joining us. That was Liva Ndewa, political analyst from our Polokwane studios. We continue with this particular discussion and, of course, analysis on the cabinet reshuffle. Let's go over to Yeben.
Yeah, thank you very much, Elvis. Rolling reaction to the cabinet reshuffle. We continue. Some are not happy with the president's decision to reshuffle his cabinet. Well, black first, land first. They're applauding the president for firing ministers such as Pravin Gordhan and SABC. Join us now. Andile Mnitama is the president of Black First, Land First. He's with us in studio. Well, one of the young voices in South Africa that people are listening to right now. Very good morning to you, sir. Thank you for being with us.
Yes, good morning. Not that young, actually.
Well,
yes.
we heard them saying that 46 is also
not
young for the appointment of these. Before we talk about youth and women and all these things that we heard about, I want to get your reaction overall with regards to what we've seen happen overnight.
Our movement, Black First, Land First, is quite happy. We believe the events of last night, this morning, was extraordinary. And as a movement, we have actually been begging the president, calling on the president to fire Pravin Gordhan and SABC Jonas. We have a high court application against the former Minister of Finance, Pravin Gordhan. In that application, which is before High Court, we said that the court must declare him captured, declare him compromised and conflicted. We must remember that Pravin was not the preferred candidate for the president for that position. The president was forced by white monopoly capital to basically appoint him. He has, and Pravin, to the disappointment of many people who had used to respect him, he has, when he took over, acted to protect the same white monopoly capital that put him in that position, which in the papers we put before court, we show he even has shares in the companies of the same white monopoly capital. The same banks which are found to have been colluding, the same companies such as Unilever, which has been stealing from the poor, Pravin Gordhan has shares in that, and Pravin Gordhan has been protecting them. The last big thing, of course, got to do with the Treasury and the Reserve Bank in particular, with regard to the banking system. We do not have a state bank, we do not have a black bank, and Pravin Gordhan has been protecting the white monopoly of the banking system. He has literally been stopping the entry of new black banks into the system. He should have by now fully licensed Itala Bank, the Post Bank, the VSB banks. They should be fully licensed as we speak so that we break the monopoly. And of course, we can talk a little bit later about what we think the new minister, Gigaba, should be doing.
What do you make of the media uproar and the kind of case against the president that's been built even before this reshuffle happened in the last week? We saw the intelligence memos being leaked and all these kinds of things. How do you view this stuff?
Firstly, I think that President Zuma is a very brilliant politician. You have to admire him even if you don't like him. He has done very interesting things because people don't realize that he moved now when the rand was at its strength. And the rand, of course, he knew they were going to attack the rand as they did before. But it will not be such a big fall. It will recover very fast. And he kept on suggesting was going to move on Pravin. So we all should be more or less expected this. That was the first big move. But the media is white-owned. In South Africa today, there is a battle. The battle between those who want radical change, who want land reform, who want the economy to be in black hands, and those who stand with white capital. The opposition parties, unfortunately, including the economic freedom fighters, are there in the interest of white monopoly capital. That is why it's shocking. You thought they claim to be socialists. You think they will be celebrating and say to President Zuma, good riddance, because Pravin has been such a big capitalist in the sense of his own policies, protection of white capital. No, they are not. They speak left, but they act right. They are with white monopoly capital. That is why they want again. Hopefully, they think that some ANC MPs, there is rumors that they've been bought. Some ANC MPs, there are rumors that they've been bought. They will vote with them to protect white capital. The DA, I think we must respect it because it is open about being a party for colonialism, a party for anti-blackness, a party for white monopoly capital. And when it calls for the motion of no confidence in the president, it is consistent with their policies. They don't want change. They want things to stay the way they are. They want colonialism. The EFF is the one that is shocking. They already have given the DA political power. Now they are with the DA in protecting white monopoly capital. Instead of saying, now is the time for us to force the ANC, the ruling party, and the president to give us real economic change. And the president is open at this point, it seems to us. Why are we not saying we want the state bank? We want the nationalization of the Reserve Bank. The only thing that I would like to talk to the president about is the land question. I'm not sure about the Ministry of Land.
Tell us quickly about your Hands Off Zuma campaign that you guys at the BLFF have started.
We started this campaign sometime last year, and this campaign really has come from our shock when we saw the president of Brazil, who was democratically elected, being removed by white monopoly capital linked to London again. And they organized to actually get rid of a president. And we in South Africa looked at exactly the same moves. The civil society, things like Save South Africa, are all organized and funded by white monopoly capital and imperialism. Johan Rupert came out, one of the biggest land, in our view, land thieves in South Africa. We call him that. And he came out and said, Zuma must go. We said, wait, something is wrong here. We must defend our president. However, we say, hands off Zuma, not willy-nilly. We say, you must do certain things. We want land, President Zuma. And we're very happy again. President Zuma has come out. He's the first president. Our people need to realize President Zuma has got many mistakes. But on the big questions, he's coming through. He says, the first president in this country, land must be returned to black people without paying for it. This is a critical question. Now we see in the economy as well. So we're going to push our demands on President Zuma, but we're going to protect him. No one is going to remove the president in means which are not lawful.
Now, there's been talk about mass resignations and cabinet ministers walking out and led by some. How do you view this kind of conversations, and do you expect this kind of thing to happen?
No, the members, the cabinet members, the privileges they have are simply a deterrent to this. So it's empty talk, it's rhetorical talk. Gordhan's man is not going to forgo his 2 BMWs and his 2 cars that he gets and the BV of securities. No, it's not. But they are trying, see what is happening, there's an attempt to instigate this dissatisfaction with from the ground.
Yeah.
Vavi and them, they're trying to get our people to. But I listen to some of the people say people are unhappy. Where I go, people are not unhappy. People are actually happy.
Yeah.
So it depends from your perspective. Those who want change are very happy with these changes. Those who don't want change are unhappy. So now I think that there's no communist is going to leave parliament because there are no communists in South Africa.
One quick, you've got less than a minute to tell us quickly about the hot seat that Malisi Gigaba now finds him in, because it's going to be the hottest seat in South Africa for the next year for sure.
Mauricio Gigaba, my advice to him is that don't regard anything said by the rating agencies. Don't listen to white-owned media. Make sure that you push for nationalization of the Reserve Bank. Make sure that you are clear about the black banks. Make sure that there's a state bank. Also move, I would say, very hard to make sure that black people benefit from procurement. Our people, President Zuma in the SONA said, we're spending 500 billion a year and 900 billion on infrastructure. All that money goes to white business. Mwalusi must be serious about set-asides. He must make sure that this money goes to in the black hands. And hopefully the deputy minister's got a lot of money on his hands. He does the same too.
Thank you very much for being with us. We can talk at length, much more.
I'm going to celebrate.
Hopefully in the future. Andile Ngitama is the president of Black First, Land First. Elvis.
Thank you, Eben. Yes, and in short, what the president there says and indicated is that Gucci revolutionaries will not give up their comforts that they currently occupy. Now, the SACP Politburo was expected to meet today to discuss the axing of the Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan and his Deputy Mcebisi Jonas at its Politburo later this morning. Now, the party has been critical of any intention by the President Jacob Zuma to axe Gordhan. It held a media briefing on Thursday saying it doesn't agree with some of the reasons Zuma cited on his intentions. We are now joined at the OR International Airport by our reporter Eldrin Sampier. He is now with the SACP Second Deputy General Secretary Salim Mapayila. A very good morning to you, Eldrin. Just give us a brief background before you speak to your guests as to what's transpiring there this morning.
Well, good morning, Elvis. Yes, we expect the SACP's Politburo to meet this morning, which includes the top brass of the party. Will be discussing issues and current affairs issues. And I guess top on the agenda will, of course, be this recent announcement by President Jacob Zuma. The issue was also raised yesterday at an SACP briefing in which they made it clear that they reject the intended reshuffling of cabinet. They reject the motive of the reshuffling. They also reject the intended person to replace Pravin Gordhan. And right now I'm joined by the Deputy Secretary General of the SACP. Yesterday you spoke about it, and today, well, this morning we woke up to news that indeed it has happened. President Jacob Zuma has decided to reshuffle his cabinet. Just an initial response from the SACP.
Yeah, thank you very much. Firstly, we're only starting our meeting now in about a few minutes. We'll then go into details about what should be our response. But obviously, we must express our disappointment, particularly with regard to the removal of Minister Pravin and Comrade Mcebisi, but on the basis of the feedback that he gave us, which, as we indicated, we could not agree to it. But I think what is largely worrying is the fact that he went on to do wholesale changes across the board, and I think without appropriate consultation. This is an issue that continues to worry us, that he believes that the prerogative right is his. Now, even the ANC officials, to an extent, have not been fully involved in this particular process, which is completely unacceptable. And I think that if we are in this movement together, we have to work together, we have to work collectively together. There's no decree, individual with a decree here, like Donald Trump. There's no Trumpism in this country, there's collectivism, and President Zuma has to understand that.
Well, you know, you have the Secretary General of the ANC who was doing an interview on Talk Radio today and saying that the President informed the top six about his intentions of reshuffling cabinet. They have raised their concerns and their objection to that as well. The SACP, which is of course a member of the alliance, has also raised its objection to this. And yet you have the president who still went ahead and reshuffled the cabinet. And more specifically, Pravin Gordhan has been removed from the Ministry of Finance as well as his deputy. What then does this point to in terms of the president's character within the current political sphere?
No, it's quite clear that the president is himself beholden to a series of interests that we do not know. But largely, you can't excuse the involvement or the influence of the Gupta group in this case. And we hope that the open gates that have now been made on the Treasury should not allow for wholesale stealing of the resources there. And South African public must join hands, stand up, and protect their national assets and make sure that the Guptas should not have a leeway to loot the resources in the treasury through using state-owned enterprises where they have got huge businesses.
Are you then suggesting that the Gupta family might be behind this cabinet reshuffle?
It doesn't need a rocket scientist to understand that and to know that there's a great influence of their role in this case.
And then the other question is, what happens now going forward? You have President Jacob Zuma, who is there, and you say now that the president is beholden unto himself. And I remember back in 2007, 2006, these were similar issues that were raised against then President Thabo Mbeki.
Yeah, there were different issues with President Mbeki. This time, for instance, what is similar was the issue that was raised about the center of political authority, which President Mbeki has taken to the union buildings. And there was a much more concerted effort to bring that back to the political party, the African National Congress. Now, President Zuma does exactly the same thing, betraying the latent spirit of that particular intervention in Polokwane. And I think that the ANC has to wake up and actually call him to order.
What does wake up mean? Or what does calling the president into order mean? And yesterday we spoke about this. We spoke about how do you make sure that the president is held accountable. You even mentioned that if the country loses money again through decisions that have been taken by the president, there should be accountability.
Yeah, of course. That's the point that we're saying, that the ANC has to appreciate and assert itself as the leader of society, as the leader of government. Is not the president as the leader. The president is privileged by the ANC to lead the government, but it shouldn't be the other way around. And I think that what he has done now, he has proved to them that he doesn't care about their views. What he decides with whoever advises him, he pushes ahead with it, and that's quite unfortunate.
Is he still the person to head that office? Is he still the right person?
Well, of course, he's there at the moment. We have to find a mechanism to discuss that. The Politburo will discuss this matter as well.
You know, yesterday when you indicated that the president has approached you with this intelligence report, you even mentioned that you reject the intention, the motive, as well as the intended replacement. And we see that Malusi Gigaba has been appointed as the Minister of Finance. And I wonder whether that intended replacement was Malusi Gigaba, even on Monday.
No, it wasn't Malusi Gigaba. Well, it was Brian Molefe, which would actually indicate that we are opposed to him. That part is fine. But the bottom line is that we did not want change there because it is the working people who are going to pay heavily for this decision.
Considering that it's not Brian Molefe and the president seems to have tried to find a balance, tried to meet the SACP halfway, he was quite clear. It seems, though, that it's quite clear that his relationship with Pravin Gordhan was never going to work going forward.
It is not about the SACP. It's not about even how he tried to reach out to us. He didn't reach out to us. And in fact, as we indicated yesterday, he doesn't have to work with comrades who bow down to him. He needs to work with comrades who will criticize him constructively, who will show him how to do things, and he can differ with them. Yes, as president takes the ultimate decision, but on the basis of differing with those comrades, he mustn't remove them. In fact, the comrades that he has removed are those that have shown that they would have differed with him in many instances. For instance, Derek Hanekom, as you know, was the man that pulled the trigger at the NEC, where he spoke about lack of confidence on him. He's a victim. It was quite clear that if he does a reshuffle, people like him will go. But it shouldn't be like that in a democratic organization, because now it sends a clear message to other NEC members that you dare differ with the president, you are out. It can't be like that. This is a democratic formation. It's not an autocracy.
If you have someone like Derek Hanekom who has raised this issue in the NEC and pushed for motion of no confidence, these are people who are removed from the ministry, but they still remain members of parliament. And then the question becomes, then, do you think that there would be a trigger towards a motion of no confidence that comes from the ANC's members in parliament to push President Jacob Zuma out of his current seat?
No, members of our movement don't work on reprisal. And I think what he has shown is that element which we should actually reject. Others should not see themselves as victims and therefore go and work out a mechanism for revenge. But they must continue to do the ANC work according to our policy, government work, and so forth. But obviously, I mean, we're all disappointed. All the people that have stopped the Gupta's programs are out. Praveen, ABC journalists who came out when they said there was no evidence. He says, I can provide some. He's a victim. And I think that this kind of mentality shows now that the Guptas are in charge. Actually, as far as I'm concerned, this is not the position of the party. The party is still to finalize its posture. As far as I'm concerned, these are Gupta changes.
Just a quick question before I let you go. You obviously, as the SACP, which has members which are also members of the executive, some who have been retained. We have Tulas Nqesu, who has been retained as well as the Secretary General of the SACP, Dr. Bladen Zimande. What's the move right now? Should these members consider resigning, considering that the party is opposed to what the president has done?
Well, we'll put this question, as I said yesterday, we'll put it up for debate. We'll raise it in the meeting for consideration by these members. But in their own right as ANC members, they are not SACP ministers. They are ANC ministers. Of course, they are party members because of the dual membership system. So we'll raise this matter and we'll discuss it. As a consequence of that, we'll take a decision. As I indicated yesterday, the point was that individuals can make a discretion whether to leave or not, or the party can take a political position and say, we want to withdraw our members. If the party does that, it must also consider that these are ANC members in their own right. They may remain, some may choose to remain on the basis of their ANC membership. That is why this matter must come to a process of discussions, not through a process of decree, because of a feeling of a few leaders. Perhaps myself in this case, I'm inclined towards that particular direction.
Solly Mapaila, thank you so much for your time. I wish that I was a fly on that wall in that meeting that will be taking place today. It's quite interesting. It should be interesting what should be unfolding over the next few hours in that Politburo meeting that will be taking place here at the OR Tambo International Airport, one of the hotels here close to the OR Tambo International Airport. And of course, from now on, we have to wait and see how this unfolds politically, both within the alliance of the ANC as well as within the cabinet, the executive, and of course in parliament. What will happen now going forward? It's back to you in studio.
Thank you, Eldrin. That's Eldrin Sampi, our reporter at the OR Tambo at that Politburo meeting. We'll keep you updated on what's transpiring there. I would have also liked to be that fly on the wall. But right now, we'll take a short break. Kendall Makamate will be back with your sports news right after that.
If you asked the British how they felt about being the biggest cider drinkers in the world, they'd say something like this. Yes. Well, we don't know about you, but that sounds like a challenge. Challenge accepted.
Get a six-pack of Savannah Dry or Light Handies for only $56.99 from Tops at Spar.
President Jacob Zuma says that the country's security agencies will seek new and more effective ways to fight crime.
Crime, as you would appreciate, depends on the circumstances. This narrative that South Africans are xenophobic, we don't necessarily agree with it.
This group of Bangladeshi shop owners ooze frustration.
they've lost everything.
I'm like totally destroyed. I can't see what I'll do, where I'll go.
Rescue workers are still searching for the body of a 5-year-old boy who fell into an old mine shaft near Boksburg in Ekurhuleni.
Tensions remain high, with thousands of community members refusing to clear the scene until the boy is found.
Good morning, welcome back on this very heady news day this Friday morning on a Newsroom. As you all know, South Africa has got new sports minister in Thulas Nxesi, the former public works minister. But also coming out of the sporting world is some big news where former Eastern Province Rugby President Cheeky Watson, Port Elizabeth businesswoman Andrea Wessels, former municipality employee Nadia Gervel and Madisi Mkaza have been arrested by the Hawks in Port Elizabeth. Now, Watson and the other co-accused handed themselves over at the Mount Road police station early this morning. A fifth suspect, Stephen Pistorius, who's currently in Cape Town, has also been implicated. They all face charges of money laundering and corruption. It is alleged that funds totaling over 200 million rands were channeled through Access Management, the company that was the Nelson Mandela Stadium operator. The fraud involves money paid for several failed projects in the Bay. Watson and the others are currently waiting to appear in the Port Elizabeth Magistrates Court. Now, Mamelodi Sundowns coach Pitso Mosimane hopes the 2-week FIFA international break has given his players some rest and a chance to recharge their batteries ahead of Saturday's upset premiership match against Kaizer Chiefs at the FNB Stadium. Sundowns have been playing lots of football on 3 fronts, and the players looked tired just before that break, losing and drawing the last 2 matches they'd played. In contrast, Kaizer Chiefs coach Steve Kompela is worried that the break might have stalled his team's momentum.
Sundowns had a good run in February, brushing aside opposition to move into the top 5 of the log. But cracks started to show when Cape Town City handed the Kluorkop-based side their 3rd loss in 16 league matches. The African champions were then held to a goalless draw by Polokwane City at Loftus Versfeld 2 weeks later. Although 5 of Downs players were in the Bafana Bafana squad, the 2 weeks would have allowed the rest to recuperate and maybe regain their form.
Obviously, the number of games that we come back from, I think they have more fresh legs with less games than us, obviously because of CAF and also the game that we have to catch up on.
Chiefs' record was impressive before Baroka scored late in their last match before the break to snatch a point. It is their performances ahead of that match their coach will be hoping they can reproduce on Saturday.
Whenever you have these breaks, they do affect your momentum, and hoping that when we come on Saturday, we'll be at a certain level of that momentum and rhythm.
Both coaches were playing mind games ahead of the highly anticipated fixture.
Kaizer Chiefs has been doing better than us on the league, if you can check the last maybe 8 games, because there was a stage when they went 5 in a row. And we envy them.
The universe favors the underdogs. So maybe Ndate Mosimane is seeking for some favor from some divine interventions. I'm not going to allow him to receive the favor. They are no underdogs.
Saturday evening's match will kick off at 8:15. Pesinka, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Mr. Mosimane and Mr. Kompela being philosophical there about that much anticipated possible title-affecting match tomorrow night. Now, the SABC has been granted rights to broadcast all FIFA events for the years 2017 and 2018. FIFA granted media rights to 5 major broadcasting entities in sub-Saharan Africa, including the SABC. And that includes the 2017 FIFA Confederations Cup and the 2018 FIFA World Cup in Russia. The SABC will broadcast that World Cup by way of free-to-air transmission. By working together with reliable partners in the sub-Saharan region, FIFA will make sure that football fans have access to a high-quality viewing experience for each of these FIFA events. Only 12 of the 54 African countries were not granted the rights. The 2017-2018 FIFA events comprise of the Under-20 and Under-17 World Cups, the Beach Soccer World Cup and the FIFA Confederations Cup. In 2018, the SABC will broadcast the men's FIFA World Cup and the women's under-20 and under-17 tournaments. And that's where we leave it for this particular hour. We'll be back shortly. Make sure that you stay close to Newsroom, because this is where we bring it to you live and direct from Auckland Park.
All right, we talk about a healthy lifestyle, but what is this healthy lifestyle?
What we're talking about really is you are healthy in those three areas of life: body, mind, and soul.
Before you embark on a weight loss journey, rather first speak to your person who has your complete clinical picture.
Ideally, your plate should look like this. Half of your plate should be fruit and vegetables. A quarter of your plate, starch. Quarter protein.
Tell you some of the things that I really enjoy doing for that bottom pouch as well as for cardio. So you do your kicks, you kick back.
Join Health Talk every Saturday for all your health news.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Media Monitor. I'm your host, Alicia Jali. What has been happening on the digital front?
To win the CAF Championship was a huge thing, and perhaps we ought to have celebrated him even more.
Absolutely.
73% of our schools, regardless whether they're in the township or they're in urban areas, if you go to those schools, you are guaranteed a matric pass.
It is the one thing that we haven't done well as a country. We have thrown money at it. I mean, if you ask for figures, you'll be told we're spending well in education.
90 billion.
But the performance of the system has not been good enough.
As a transgender activist, do you feel welcome? Are you free here in South Africa?
In South Africa, we think that 1994 just took an eraser and erased a lot of the issues of apartheid.
What is the difference between you and me?
You know, a person can easily say we're all human, but we need to embrace our differences.
The fact that it is called a gay club, why are other clubs not called other things?
It's a safety thing, you know. By virtue of actually speaking about this incident, brings about the question of why do you even need a club that needs to be called a gay club? I cannot walk into a club with my lover, my male lover. I cannot walk into Taboo, a South African club, and just hold my lover and we kiss, and then people think it's okay.
They do that?
Well, we do, but then there have been instances of actually people, bouncers walking in and actually telling you to stop or get out of the club.
Do you think it was a mistake that you were born a boy?
I've come to, not to peace with my body, but I've accepted myself where I am completely.
Somebody may say you are lying, because if you have accepted yourself completely as you are, you would be the boy that your mom gave birth to.
I can self-actualize. I can become what I want to be at the end of the day.
Umphakathi wexwayiswa nga-200 imbumbulu. Kepha labanye bathi akusuye 200 kuphela lo inkinga.
Into sineproblem nayo abo 100 rand. Labo ke ababonakali awusheshi uyibone ukuthi ifake.
Iphuma phi pho imali mbumbulu?
Ahlanganise lamaphepha akamnyama afake 100 rand yamphakathi from lapha iclean kwavela ama 100 rand ayi3.
Can I trust you, sister?
Oh man, I'm in the business of making money.
Ubese uthatha lo 100 rand lesimnike wona wawufaka emkhathini walamaphepha lamabili. Emva kwaloko uthethe stap lesimnyama wasigcobisa etikwalamaphepha. Emva kwekuyomisa le mali ubese usibuyisela lo 100 rand lesimnikete wona ekuqaleni. Uphindze wasibhanisela ngalomunye 100 rand.
Welcome back. 11 a.m. Central African time. We're continuing with our rolling reaction. It is, Elvis. Rolling reaction.
Rolling reaction throughout, from all corners, from the economy to political analysis on this particular issue. The cabinet reshuffle last night, while you were sleeping, that plunged the rand at around 5% this morning after the president fired the finance minister, Gordhan, and 5 other ministers in a dramatic midnight cabinet reshuffle.
That's the new finance minister. If you've just woken up, or if you're watching elsewhere, if you're watching in the Middle East, if you're watching anywhere else on the African continent, this is the new finance minister here in South Africa. Of course, we've been running a poll. Yes, we've been running a poll. We want to gauge your view and your opinion on the president's decision. Well, he's actually fired 5 ministers and reassigned 5 others. So 10 in, and also appointed a further 10 deputies. So do you support the president's new cabinet, Elvis?
Appointees there. So 85% of you, there's 661 votes in, 85% of you around the continent of Africa are saying no. 15% are saying yes.
Yeah, interesting. Here's some of your tweets. This one from Mzolisi. He says, people of Nitama shouldn't and mustn't be taken seriously. What has he done of substance instead of attacking the EFF of South Africa? He says, of course, we had him in earlier. And we'll put that interview, Elvis, we'll put that interview up on all our social pages if you've missed it. Also, it's on YouTube. Just put in SABC Newsroom and it'll pop up on today's date.
Christian Kleinan says, I wonder if Andile gets paid every time he uses the word WMC. Please ask him. He may be coining it. White monopoly capital, of course, if you don't know what that is.
Yeah, Mochabi Mochapi says, Newsroom, I don't support the President Zuma's cabinet reshuffle. Why can't he deal with underperforming ministers? Yes. Interesting question, that one.
Andila Jomo says, we need young blood, new ideas, new approaches in these ministries. The finance and police in our country specifically.
We have new blood now, 46-year-old new blood, both of them.
Yeah.
Padilla King says, Newsroom, radical economic transformation cannot take place while there is disagreement between the executive. It was meant to happen, says Party Like a King. That's Vuvuza. So, we're also running a question, of course, today, Elvis.
And we're asking you, what do you make of the cabinet reshuffle? Let's take a look at what you have to say around that. And you have a number of comments in around that. You can send it on the Twitter handle as well as on the Facebook page. Sipo says, a cabinet reshuffle is not a new thing. Powers have been assigned to the president. When the time comes, he and his admin must adhere to what he's done.
Alex Motapo says, what does influence the removal of one minister come next national elections? Then we can have our new party to rule this country, says Alex.
Who's the party, Alex? Depansu says. The South African government has been compromised, sold to the highest bidder. Rest in peace, South Africa. It's been good. We are running on autopilot. Whoa, well, there
Many different views. Some supporting the president, others not. Mlungisi Zwani says, what's this obsession about Pravin Gordhan?
Cabinet in distress suffer. What did he say there? The NCPO says, we voted for the change. And when the change is implemented, we criticize. We politicize. Why complaining when implementing change? Well, there you have it from CPO.
Yeah, keep it coming. Keep tweeting us. We'd love to interact with you. We're going to continue with a rolling reaction on the cabinet reshuffle. Of course, massive implications. Some call it a political and economic tsunami.
They call it a tsunami, but we'll have to wait and see if that tsunami will happen, if it will trigger. Like we've seen the trigger on Brexit. The president has triggered a cabinet reshuffle. Let's take a look at your news headlines. The presidency has announced that the swearing-in ceremony for the new ministers will take place at 4 o'clock this afternoon. Breaking news. Deputy President of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, has distanced himself from the cabinet reshuffle. And the SACP will meanwhile discuss the axing of the former Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan and his deputy Mcebisi Jonas at his Politburo later this morning. Now, those are some of your headlines. But before we get to the news, let's find out and go over there to Kendo Carol Makamate to find out what's happening on the sporting field. Or is it more about arrest on the sporting arena?
Yes, you know what? Once again, you know when the sports makes it into general news and all sorts of other bulletins, and we're worried about what's happening with that, you know it's a big story. But bigger than that, Cheeky Watson's arrest, Elvis, is we've got a new sporting minister.
You say Robert Marawa has gone to ground. He stopped tweeting today?
Well, no, he's not tweeting about this.
Okay.
He's not tweeting at all about this. We do hope that we'll get some comment, because he is one of our main commentators on social media about all things to do with sports, as well as on mainstream radio. Mr. Robert Marawa will be hoping to hear what your thoughts are on everything with regards to sports over this last weekend. Now, this is what we've got for you in the sports today. After President Jacob Zuma's late-night cabinet reshuffle, meet Thembelani Mngisi, South Africa's new sports minister, replacing Fikile Mbalula. And the Hawks have arrested former Eastern Province Rugby President Cheeky Watson along with 3 other people for fraud in Port Elizabeth. And of course, the match of the weekend also billed as a potential title decider between defending champions Mamelodi Sundowns and Kaizer Chiefs is set to bring fireworks. Oh, and I'll also have you know that Robert Marawa, according to his Twitter account, I think he's currently in Australia, and that may be one of the reasons why he hasn't said much about what's happened recently. All of this and more later on in the Sports Bulletin. Be sure to stick around. For now, it's back to the main desk for the news.
Thank you, mate. If it's in Australia, that's Kendall Makamate. We'll be back a little bit later. But breaking news. The presidency has announced that the swearing-in ceremony of the new ministers will take place at 4 o'clock this afternoon. Meanwhile, the rand is plunged by around 5% after the president fired the finance minister, Gordhan, in a dramatic midnight cabinet reshuffle. Home Affairs Malusi Gagaba has replaced Gordhan. The rand fell as low as 13.46 before recovering slightly, but the president named a total of 10 new ministers and deputy ministers. The president says that he has directed the new cabinet to work with their colleagues to bring about radical social-economic transformation.
Fellow South Africans, I've decided to make changes to the national executive in order to improve efficiency and effectiveness. The changes bring some younger MPs and women into the national executive in order to benefit from their energy, experience, and expertise. I have directed the new ministers and deputy ministers to work tirelessly with their colleagues to bring about radical socio-economic transformation and to ensure that the promise of a better life for the poor and the working class becomes a reality. The new members are the following. Minister of Energy is Kensani Kubai. Minister of Transport, Mr. Joe Maswanganyi. Minister of Finance, Mr. Malusi Gigaba. Minister of Police, Mr. Fikile Mbalula. Minister of Public Works, Mr. Nati Kleko. Minister of Sports and Recreation, Minister Thembelani Mngisi. Minister of Tourism, Ms. Thokozile Xhasa. Minister of Public Service and Administration, Ms. Faith Mutambi. Minister of Home Affairs, Professor Hlengiwe Mkhize. Minister of Communications, Ms. Ayanda Dlodlo. I wish to extend my gratitude to the outgoing ministers and deputy ministers for their service to the country. I also wish the new ministers and deputy ministers the best in their new responsibilities. I thank you.
We continue with breaking news. The Deputy President of South Africa and of the African National Congress, Cyril Ramaphosa, has distanced himself from the cabinet reshuffle. Yesterday, reports said that Ramaphosa and Gwede Mantashe did not agree with some changes.
No, the president has effected his cabinet reshuffle. Before doing so, he met the ANC officials. It was just a process of informing us of his decision. It was not a consultation because he came with a ready-made list. And I raised my concern and objection on the removal of the Minister of Finance, largely because he was being removed based on an intelligence report that I believe had unsubstantiated allegations about the Minister of Finance and his deputy going to London to mobilize financial markets against our country. Now that I find totally unacceptable, that a person who has served our country with such distinction would do something like that. And it reminded me of my own situation in 2001, when there was an intelligence report that said that I was involved in a plot to overthrow the government of then President Thabo Mbeki. Now, when this one came up, it disturbed me greatly, because in 2001, once that report came out, I went to Nelson Mandela, and who said, "Don't panic, I will handle this matter," because it was preposterous to even allege that a person like me could be involved in a plot to overthrow my own government. And similarly, my strong objection to the removal of the Minister of Finance and his deputy is being based on spurious allegations, and that is the basis of my objection. And I told the president so, that I would not agree with him on his reasoning to remove the Minister of Finance. And I told him that this I would articulate publicly. So this is where we are. He has made his choice, and let me say, the president has the prerogative to appoint and dismiss ministers of his cabinet. It is his choice, and he has exercised his choice. Thank you.
Where to from here? Will you be resigning? Are you going to resign?
No, I will not. I'm staying to serve our people in government. I've made my views known, and there are quite a number of other colleagues and comrades who are unhappy about this situation, particularly the removal of the Minister of Finance, who are serving the country with absolute distinction, with great ability, and he has proven that he is a talented person. That for him to be removed for this type of reasoning is to me unacceptable.
What about the other ministers that have also been removed?
Well, the other ministers, the president has appointed them, and others have been removed, and it is the president's prerogative.
That was the Deputy President on the issue of the Finance Minister. Meanwhile, the Minister of Health, Aaron Motsoaledi, has refused to comment on the cabinet reshuffle. Now, he was with the Deputy President when the SABC approached him at the launch of the National Strategic Plan to deal with HIV and TB in Bloemfontein. Now, former Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan predicted the reshuffle on Wednesday when he spoke to our foreign editor, Sophie Mukwena.
Well, I think what we've got to learn is how to continue to enrich our democracy and make sure that our institutions work. Secondly, remember that we are, in whatever position we have, we're there for the masses of our people and to improve their living conditions, and so that they can all have a more dignified and better life, which is what Amal Kathrada did through his 60-odd years of activism. Thirdly, that we can't just sit on our couches and expect good things to happen. We need to become active. We need to involve ourselves in good things that will improve lives, but also stop bad things, which will ensure that we don't go in the wrong direction. His life teaches us that South Africa has huge potential still to be an example to the world. We must not waste that potential and that opportunity. And so future generations have the responsibility of taking over, but remaining active, not passive.
And finally, whether politician, minister, any capacity, it's fine. I'm saying serving the nation doesn't demand one to have a capacity to attack.
We weren't ministers when we got involved in the anti-apartheid struggle in the early 70s. And you're not a minister for life. So if you've got to work out what...
A presumed U.S. drone strike in the south of the country has killed 3 Al-Qaeda suspects.
Death toll in Yemen's 18-month-old civil war now stands at about 10,000.
People get killed or die and are actually buried before they're recorded. And we don't have a way of recording that, but we know the numbers are much higher.
Water restrictions are to be imposed on villages in and around the Nkomazi municipality.
Pumps can't pump the water because there's no water in a river. And if the water is coming back, then it's full of mud.
Those who can pray and those who can do any miracle to make sure that we've got enough rain, give it a try.
We're going to take you back to that breaking news story. The Deputy President of South Africa and of the ANC, Cyril Ramaphosa, has distanced himself from the cabinet reshuffle. Yesterday, reports suggest that Ramaphosa and Gordhan did not agree with some changes.
No, the President has effected his cabinet reshuffle. Before doing so, he met the ANC officials. It was just a process of informing us of his decision. It was not a consultation because he came with a ready-made list. And I raised my concern and objection on the removal of the Minister of Finance, largely because he was being removed based on an intelligence report that I believe had unsubstantiated allegations about the Minister of Finance and his deputy going to London to mobilize financial markets against our country. Now that I find totally unacceptable, that a person who has served our country with such distinction would do something like that. And it reminded me of my own situation in 2001, when there was an intelligence report that said that I was involved in a plot to overthrow the government of then President Thabo Mbeki. Now, when this one came up, it disturbed me greatly, because in 2001, once that report came out, I went to Nelson Mandela, and who said, "Don't panic, I will handle this matter," because it was preposterous to even allege that a person like me could be involved in a plot to overthrow my own government. And similarly, my strong objection to the removal of the Minister of Finance and his deputy is being based on spurious allegations, and that is the basis of my objection. And I told the President so, that I would not agree with him on his reasoning to remove the Minister of Finance. And I told him that this I would articulate publicly. So this is where we are. He has made his choice, and let me say, the president has the prerogative to appoint and dismiss ministers of his cabinet. It is his choice, and he has exercised his choice. Thank you.
Where to from here? Will you be resigning? Are you going to resign?
No, I will not. I'm staying to serve our people in government. I've made my views known, and there are quite a number of other colleagues and comrades who are unhappy about this situation, particularly the removal of the Minister of Finance, who are serving the country with absolute distinction, with great ability, and he has proven that he is a talented person. That for him to be removed for this type of reasoning is to me unacceptable.
What about the other ministers that have also been removed?
Well, the other ministers, the president has appointed them, and others have been removed, and it is the president's prerogative.
That's reaction from the deputy president, not happy with the removal of the finance minister. Let's now go to our reporter Sipho Stuurman, who is at the march that is planned in Pretoria to march against the cabinet reshuffle that happened late last night. Sipho Stuurman, a very good morning to you and welcome.
Good morning to you, Elvis. And yes, that's correct. We are in Pretoria, where a number of protesters, a few hundreds of them, have already gathered here this morning outside Treasury. This is happening, of course, as the outgoing finance minister, that is Pravin Gordhan, is also briefing media inside, as we understand. But outside, however, there is a gathering here that consists of the organizations such as Save SA. Also, we have Section 27 here coming together, calling for South Africans to stand together and to stand up for Pravin Gordhan, saying that his removal was uncalled for and that it is a part of a plot to capture the Treasury.
Now, you say that the finance minister is inside conducting a press briefing. Will he be speaking at the march?
Well, right now there's no indication that he will be speaking, but of course we expect that he would address his supporters. They essentially, all the people that have gathered here, they are here to support him, to lend their support behind him, and of course to voice their concerns over the manner that he has been sacked. We know, of course, that Pravin Gordhan has always had troubles with the president in terms of. We know that their relationship has not been great, and we have seen that in the past that he had faced the charges, and during that time, Save SA, of course, came forward again, organized people to march in support of Pravin in court. So we would expect him to address these people that have gathered here, to lend their support behind him. They're describing him as a very competent finance minister who helped us avoid a number of downgrades to junk status. So, of course, I think that he will be talking to them, and it will be interesting to hear what he will have to say. But, of course, we know that the finance minister has always said that every minister serves at the pleasure of the president, and whatever decision the president takes, he will support. So we would expect him to continue with that message that it is the president's decision and that it should be respected, as he does have the presidential prerogative to hire and fire ministers.
At the end of the day, what are the marchers hoping to achieve with this march?
Well, the marchers are hoping to raise awareness and to say that they do not accept, to make their voices heard, that they do not accept the appointment of now new finance minister, that is Malusi Gigaba. They're saying that that is something they do not support and they will not stand for it. And they're calling for South Africans to also air their voices, and in the hope that perhaps if there is enough pressure, the president then will be persuaded to change his mind.
Who else?
Currently, of course, that does not look likely, because we know that at 6 o'clock the swearing in of the new ministers is going ahead. So that is what they're hoping for. And some, they're saying that they will be here until whatever hour. They are not leaving this vicinity, that is the Treasury entrance right now. So we will see how long this goes.
Sipho, who else is supposed to speak at the march?
Well, currently, right now on stage, we do have Vavi, who is, of course, with his new federation that is called the South African Federation of Trade Unions, or SACP. He is He is here on stage currently addressing supporters. I did mention that we do have Mark Haywood from Section 27, and we do have some leaders from Save SA that are also on stage and will be addressing the crowds that are gathering here. And it seems to be picking up steam every minute. Some people are spoken to some of the supporters here. They told us that they've actually left their work quite early to be part of this, to lend their voice to this call to guard the treasury, as they call it.
Thank you, Sipho Stirman there from Pretoria, giving us the latest update there from the march in Pretoria. As you heard him saying, Save SA is there, as well as Section 21 in support of Pravin Gordhan, which is currently sitting in a news or a press briefing. And we'll keep you updated as to what comes out of that press briefing. We'll take a short break and we'll be right back after that.
After a horrific accident, major questions were asked.
So step one, I asked myself, do I really want to die? And my answer to that was, I'm not sure. And then step two was, do I want my parents to bury me? And the answer to that was no.
Learning kept his brain in full action on how the brain works.
When I was in hospital, right, as I was saying, to catch up with my peers, I started to become obsessed with memory techniques and how the brain works and how we retain information.
Touching lives is his continuous mission.
I now work for a non-profit where we deal with access issues regarding kids with disabilities and persons with disability. We're busy working on beach access.
Being wheelchair-bound did not stop fun in his life.
I party in a wheelchair, I laugh in a wheelchair, I smile in a wheelchair.
For all your uplifting stories, catch Bupilong every Friday.
Let me remind you of that breaking news story. The Deputy President of South Africa and the ANC, Cyril Ramaphosa, has distanced himself from the cabinet reshuffle. Yesterday, reports said that Ramaphosa and Gordhan, the GS, did not agree with some changes.
No, the President has effected his cabinet reshuffle. Before doing so, he met the ANC officials. It was just a process of informing us of his decision. It was not a consultation because he came with a ready-made list. And I raised my concern and objection on the removal of the Minister of Finance, largely because he was being removed based on an intelligence report that I believe had unsubstantiated allegations about the Minister of Finance and his deputy going to London to mobilize financial markets against our country. Now that I find totally unacceptable, that a person who has served our country with such distinction would do something like that. And it reminded me of my own situation in 2001, when there was an intelligence report that said that I was involved in a plot to overthrow the government of then President Thabo Mbeki. Now, when this one came up, it disturbed me greatly, because in 2001, once that report came out, I went to Nelson Mandela, and who said, "Don't panic, I will handle this matter," because it was preposterous to even allege that a person like me could be involved in a plot to overthrow my own government. And similarly, my strong objection to the removal of the Minister of Finance and his deputy is being based on spurious allegations, and that is the basis of my objection. And I told the President so, that I would not agree with him on his reasoning to remove the Minister of Finance. And I told him that this I would articulate publicly. So this is where we are. He has made his choice, and let me say, the President has the prerogative to appoint and dismiss ministers of his cabinet. It is his choice, and he has exercised his choice. Thank you.
Where to from here? Will you be resigning? Are you going to resign?
No, I will not. I'm staying to serve our people in government. I've made my views known, and there are quite a number of other colleagues and comrades who are unhappy about this situation, particularly the removal of the Minister of Finance, who are serving the country with absolute distinction, with great ability, and he has proven that he is a talented person. That for him to be removed for this type of reasoning is to me unacceptable.
What about the other ministers that have also been removed?
Well, the other ministers, the President has appointed them, and others have been removed, and it is the President's prerogative.
Now, the former Finance Minister, Pravin Gordhan, predicted the reshuffle on Wednesday when he spoke to our foreign editor, Sophie Mukwena.
Well, I think what we've got to learn is how to continue to enrich our democracy and make sure that our institutions work. Secondly, remember that we are, in whatever position we have, we're there for the masses of our people and to improve their living conditions, and so that they can all have a more dignified and better life, which is what Amal Kathrada did through his 60-odd years of activism. Thirdly, that we can't just sit on our couches and expect good things to happen. We need to become active. We need to involve ourselves in good things that will improve lives, but also stop bad things, which will ensure that we don't go in the wrong direction. His life teaches us that South Africa has huge potential still to be an example to the world. We must not waste that potential and that opportunity. And so future generations have the responsibility of taking over, but remaining active, not passive.
And finally, whether politician, ministers, any capacity, it's fine. I'm saying serving the nation doesn't demand one to have a capacity.
We weren't ministers when we got involved in the anti-apartheid struggle in the early 70s. And you're not a minister for life. So if you've got to work out what your conscience is, what your values are, what integrity means to you, and as long as you're satisfied that you're doing the right thing, that's fine. But those who are endangering other people's lives through their greed and through a relentless search for money in their own pockets, they must be stopped, because they are destroying this country. Thank you.
Spoke to the second Deputy Secretary of the SACP, Solima Paila.
We must express our disappointment, particularly with regard to the removal of Minister Pravin and Comrade Mcebisi, but on the basis of the feedback that he gave us, which, as we indicated, we could not agree to it. But I think what is largely worrying is the fact that he went on to do wholesale changes across the board, and I think without appropriate consultation. This is an issue that continues to worry us, that he believes that the prerogative right is his. Now, even the ANC officials, to an extent, have not been fully involved in this particular process, which is completely unacceptable. And I think that if we're in this movement together, we have to work together, we have to work collectively together. There's no decree, individual with a decree here, like Donald Trump. There's no Trumpism in this country, there's collectivism. And President Zuma has to understand that.
Well, you know, you have the Secretary General of the ANC who was doing an interview on Talk Radio today and saying that the President informed the top six about his intentions of reshuffling cabinet. They have raised their concerns and their objection to that as well. The SACP, which is of course a member of the alliance, has also raised its objection to this. And yet you have the President who still went ahead and reshuffled the cabinet. And more specifically, Pravin Gordhan has been removed from the Ministry of Finance as well as his deputy. What then does this point to in terms of the President's character within the current political sphere?
No, it's quite clear that the President is himself beholden to a series of interests that we do not know. But largely, you can't excuse the involvement or the influence of the Gupta group in this case, and we hope that the open gates that have now been made on the Treasury should not allow for wholesale stealing of the resources there, and South African public must join hands, stand up and protect their national assets and make sure that the Guptas should not have a leeway to loot the resources in the Treasury through using state-owned enterprises where they have got huge businesses.
Are you then suggesting that the Gupta family might be behind this cabinet reshuffle?
Doesn't need a rocket scientist to understand that and to know that there's a great influence of their role in this case.
And then the other question is, what happens now going forward? You have President Jacob Zuma who is there, and you say now that the President is beholden unto himself. And I remember back in 2007, 2006, these were similar issues that were raised against then President Thabo Mbeki.
Yeah, there were different issues with President Mbeki. This time, for instance, what is similar was the issue that was raised about the center of political authority, which President Mbeki has taken to the union buildings. And there was a much more concerted effort to bring that back to the political party, the African National Congress. Now, President Zuma does exactly the same thing, betraying the latent spirit of that particular intervention in Polokwane. And I think that the ANC has to wake up and actually call him to order.
What does wake up mean? And what does calling the President into order mean? And yesterday we spoke about this. We spoke about how do you make sure that the President is held accountable. You even mentioned that if the country loses money again through decisions that have been taken by the President, there should be accountability.
Yeah, of course. That's the point that was.
Well, that's our reporter there at the airport, Eldrin Sampear, with that report from the South African Communist Party. Their views on this issue, and of course they will be sitting with the Politburo this morning to discuss this issue. Now, ANC Youth League General Secretary Njabulo Nzuza says that President Jacob Zuma should be applauded for respecting and upholding the Constitution. The League says that President Jacob Zuma has carried out all his constitutional obligations, including the findings of the public protector to pay a portion of the money that was said to have unduly be used to do the private Nkandla home upgrades. Now, for more on this, Nzuza joins us on the line. A very good morning to you and welcome.
Yes, good morning, and good morning to the viewers at home.
Mr. Nzuza, I first want to check with you your take and whether or not you are happy with the cabinet reshuffle and the new ministers that have been appointed by the President.
Yes, as the ANC Youth League, we are very happy with the ministers that have been appointed. It shows that we are looking towards introducing generational change in the leadership of the organization and in the leadership of the country. And I must put it on record that there is not, the people cannot today grandstand and say the President did not consult, because when he consulted them, they are the ones who then went to the media and said we've been consulted and we are not happy. And that is not how consultation works. On consultation, you air your views. It does not mean that the views that you have had must then be taken as all that is correct. The President ultimately has a right to reshuffle cabinet, and the President exercised his constitutional obligations as given by the Constitution. It is business as usual. Now we must focus on building a better country. And our views have always been around the issue of the finance minister, that he is not delivering in terms of key issues like the state bank that should have been established to invest in youth entrepreneurship and invest in the overall development of the country. Right now, banks cannot tell us that the markets are reacting in a certain way, whereas themselves, they've been found to have colluded to control forex trading. Today, we can't now say the markets are now collapsing and all those things. No, it's because they are colluding to do those things, to force political leaders to take decisions that protect them. That is what is happening here, and they will continue to try and do so. What we must do now is discipline them and make sure that they don't play around with our currency, they don't play around with the lives of our people.
Well, the currency has suffered a 5% drop, Mr. Njabulo, and the Deputy President says, as well as the ANC Secretary-General Gordhan Mantashe, that the party was not consulted on the reshuffle and does not endorse the list. As the ANC Youth League, what is your stance, and are you in accordance with the mother body?
Well, at the end of the day, if they have their own views, they can go and air them. Ultimately, if there is a decision of the ANC, it has to come from the National Executive Committee if there are different views on the matter. And as it stands right now, it is the President who is entrusted with those powers. Let them come to the NEC, who will explain to them that this is the best decision that has ever been taken.
There were talk of a mass walkout out of the cabinet. A lot of people are calling for the President, Jacob Zuma, to resign. As the ANC Youth League, are you still confident that the President will finish his term?
On Monday, we will show you thousands of people live who will say President Jacob Zuma must stay. People cannot come and speak on the media, less than 100 people, then we take their views as that it's the views of the majority. We will go to the ground and mobilize people to come and show support for President Jacob Zuma so that we show that these decisions actually resonate well with the people of this country. Even since the morning today, we've been receiving calls and SMSs saying that, well done, decision taken by the President is congratulated. People must tell us where they develop their own views. Their own views cannot be subjected as the views of the nation. Everyone was saying it's going to be chaos, it's going to be this and this and this. The country must move forward. We must continue with our program of radical economic transformation, and anyone who stands in the way of that program of radical economic transformation, protecting banks, we will leave no stone unturned.
So, are you then happy with the appointment of the new Finance Minister, Malusi Gigaba? And will that not lead, as one of the analysis has indicated, that it would lead to the Guptarization of the government?
What is happening is that we are seeing a more younger generation coming in. Malusi Gigaba has an impeccable record, both at a political leadership level and also as a statesman, as a person who has led in government. He has a vast of experience. He's got academic qualifications. He can work well with other colleagues. He understands our program of radical economic transformation. There will not have been a better candidate than Malusi Gigaba. We believe that we are on track and we are steadfast in the implementation of the program, with Malusi Gigaba being responsible for the treasury.
Is it your belief, as the African National Youth League, that the appointees were based on merit as well as performance?
Yes. You look at Home Affairs, how the minister has performed. It's performed very well. And as a result, it does mean that he has implemented organizational policy and must therefore continue in Treasury to implement organizational policy. One thing you must understand about the markets are meant to respond to a change in policy. And as a result, there is no change. It's still the ANC. We must implement policy decisions of the ANC. This is something that the markets have known for a long time. Markets can't respond to individuals unless if people continue to collude to collapse our market.
Now, some would say that Malusi Gigaba has got no finance experience. Does that bother you at all?
Well, what you have here is strategic leadership. That is what is required. You have a vast of experience in terms of people with BCom accounting, people who are actuaries, who are employed in the department. What he is expected to do is to drive the department and provide strategic leadership towards the attainment of certain goals. And he will obviously borrow from a collective leadership that is already there in Treasury. And those who do not identify themselves with this agenda of radical economic transformation in the officials, they can also leave and will get more qualified people who come in and drive that particular shift.
Radical transformation or economic transformation relates to how the country grow and whether or not we are in a loop of a credit rating downgrade. How would you react to that?
I don't even understand why we still trust Moody's in this country to come and do sovereign ratings. I mean, we're talking about people who have been found to be criminals. In the United States, they colluded to make sure that they bring down and brought up the global crunch. So now we are saying that, no, we must worry about them. Why must we worry about views of criminals who have been proven to not to be honest? In fact, we should not be taking those people like Moody's very serious. Their ratings are becoming more and more worthless. What we need is change for a man on the street to live in better conditions, not for certain statistics to be provided to us, which have been proven to be fake.
Mr. Njabula, thank you so much for your time. That was the African National Congress Youth League General Secretary Njabula Nzuza giving us his thoughts as the African National Congress Youth League. Well, that's where we got to leave it. It's been a long day, and it's going to be a long day ahead of us too. We hope that you've enjoyed this program here on the Newsroom. From myself, Elvis Preslin, and the team, we bid you farewell. We see you on Monday, the same time, same place. Ciao for now. Arrivederci.
Water-wise, water is an essential need. The scarcity of it could lead to loss of many lives, including livestock, plants, and much more. It requires us to use it sparingly and responsibly in times of need, failing which our taps and sanitation will not function. For more on water and weather issues, stay tuned to News Today, every Friday at 4:45 Central African Time. SABC News, making you water-wise.
Being orphaned at an early age propelled him to better heights.
When I was 16, my mother passed away, and I had no choice than to find work, and I had to juggle work between work and school. I've worked on different coffee shops, and eventually in 2012, I started my own business called Sikhi's Brew.
Laying good business acumen since childhood nurtured her good standing.
I happened to grow up in a family where my father is a businessman. And as a businessman, he used to have lots of friends from different parts of the world. Business, you need to be committed. You need to live it. You need to love it. You need to be there, at the moment.
For more inspiring stories, stay tuned to Bipilong every Friday.
A top 5 rated horse racing event in the world, fashion is a highlight for those in attendance. All decked out in blue and white, the Lomorians Queen Plate is the premier event that kicked off everyone's social calendar.
That it was all part of my master plan to cast John Legend, but deprive him of his normal instrument and give that one to Ryan.
The House of Truth is not just a name. It is a religion. It is a lifestyle. It is a conviction that drives us.
What really excites me is how people have kept it very simple and also played with the theme, and how each person has interpreted it in their own way.
To stay updated with all the current entertainment news, tune into Trends every Saturday from 12 to 1.
Failure to implement the water restriction is going to make the system not workable. For the domestic use, everyone should not exceed 25 kiloliters per day.
What is the penalty and how much have you raked in thus far as a municipality?
For domestic users, if they exceed 25 kiloliters, then they're going to be charged a penalty on their monthly bill. And so far already we've collected 1.7 million.
The 200 million rand state-of-the-art school in Magaliesburg had been vandalized by drug addicts. How bad is it?
It's very bad. Into the hostel residents, it was even worse because
There, the doors, the wardrobes, the beds, the ceiling were broken down. Showers were ripped off, and it couldn't be used by students who are actually using that particular boarding facility.
You know what your ambit of responsibilities are as Minister and Deputy Minister. What is the urgency for removing you? What is the reason for your removal? What is this grab about? What do South Africans need to look for as that's going to unfold in the next coming days and weeks as the grab of the National Treasury takes hold? Thank you.
No, we have a very proud democratic tradition here. So we don't mind consulting with each other in your presence. But don't misread it, eh?
Can I just say the following? Because I think many of the questions seem to be driving to a particular point. I can see. If you look at the events in South Africa in the last couple of years, should I say, I think there are certain patterns that you have seen, events that point to particular interests being protected, being consolidated, being deepened. And I think probably the state of capture report, which I don't know, it's called state of capture or state capture report, is probably the pinnacle of that point, where it probably consolidates a picture of a state that is increasingly, or institutions that are increasingly becoming vulnerable. Institutions that are increasingly being centers for attack, in many instances, to be blunt, for looting, actually. So that's a reality that we have. You don't need to be a genius to see the trend in the country. And so it's important. I'm not going to interpret for you what this means, what the agency is, as Ranjani is asking. What I'm telling you is that you have in front of you history unfolding. And at the center of that history that is unfolding is a democracy in a sense, and the democracy in a sense, and economy in a sense, being undermined by all sorts of things. And some of those are actually diversion of state resources to serve particular interests. Now, the story of our state-owned enterprises is a known story. So you just need to read public documents called annual reports. You also need to read a couple of other statements that show you. So I think South Africans you have a responsibility, I keep on making the point of connecting these dots to say, what is the political moment in the country? And if we're not doing that, I can tell you now, by the time I think the disaster hits the country, we'll actually be accused of having lived with our eyes wide shut, when actually political decay is deepening. I'm not answering the question, but I'm saying that's the context, by the way. And some of the questions you're asking about what is it, agency and so on and so on, I would say find the answer within the context I'm painting. And I can be more frank than on these issues, but I think we have a challenge. It's a national challenge. And it's not about Pravin, Gordhan, it's not about journalists, it's not about some of the people that, clearly there is something that as a country we need to be worried about. And I'm not going, I think that if you really go back to the state of capture report and a whole range of other documents and the Denton report, the whole range of these reports circulating, what picture are they painting? What are they saying about where we're going? I'm not going to tell you what, but I think that gives you a context
to understand some of the questions you're raising about agency. The report is nonsensical. I mean, to be frank. I mean, whether you read it from whatever angle you read it, even if you consider language of it, by the way, it's like it's written by amateurs. Even if you consider the logic of it, it's fundamentally so flawed. South Africa is an open economy. So how do you not mobilize investors outside of the country to ensure that they invest in the economy? An open economy, how can it be killed by two individuals, by the way, if you're saying we are destroying individuals? I would say you read also the text. There are families that are mentioned in the report, which Treasury seeks to undermine. Since when have families become, I mean, families are important, but it seems that increasingly we have those that are becoming a national agenda. So I'm saying that's the reading that you must make, not us.
Bottom line is that we don't want to spoil your reading pleasure. But let me reinforce the point the Deputy Minister is making, and that is that connect the dots. Don't look at individual dots. And even if the state of capture report is 1/3 true, that should be concerning us. You don't have to prove every single thing. Why is Denel going to court against the Treasury? Why is Denel insistent upon VR Laser and Denel Asia and so on? In what circumstance do you get the chairperson of the board of an SOC attacking a minister of government publicly? Why is that chairperson allowed to continue to do so? Why isn't that person called to account in a democratic, open South Africa and told to behave? They are heads of other institutions, one in particular that you will be familiar with that I might be referring to, right? No other head of institution talks about or to the political head that he is responsible to in the manner that he does and get away with it. So, why undermine legitimate authority is a question that all South Africans should ask themselves. And we're not raising this because it's a parochial issue. As my good comrade here has pointed out, these are serious national issues. And when, if you don't mind me saying so with great respect, when the media only chases sound bites and doesn't paint a complete picture, right, and doesn't represent the facts in sufficient detail so that ordinary South Africans are empowered with both the facts and sufficiently rounded knowledge, which enables them to ask the question, are these guys representing our interests? Or are they doing their own thing? A democracy can only work if citizens are informed. A democracy can only work if those citizens get the opportunity to question us and ask us to explain ourselves, not get away with all the things that we want to get away with. And that's a dream that many generations of freedom fighters have sacrificed a lot of their lives for, and literally so as well. So coming to the first question, Barry, and I must commend you, it was morning, by the way, when you were speaking, commend you on the accuracy of some of your reporting. I was listening to how you tried to communicate the complex matters in court, and you did extremely well, if I may say so. What the SG has in mind is for the SG to explain, right? But I think he's set sufficient, a sufficient amount in the public domain to indicate to us that as a member of the top 6 of the ANC, he's not entirely happy, and that he doesn't feel empowered enough in those circumstances to have had the opportunity and the ability to influence a key set of decisions. And I'm sure that within the structures of the ANC, these are matters that must be taken up and dealt with, but it's not for me to actually comment on that process. Safe to say that if indeed decisions are being made elsewhere, which determines the future of institutions, which impact on the future of our country, then we should all be very afraid.
In any case, Minister, you should also probably take the point a little bit further. The fact that you have parallelism politically and in terms of authority, it's not ahistorical. It happens in many societies when increasingly you see decision-making taken outside of the formal structure. When in fact structures, when democracy just becomes a formality, actually decisions get taken elsewhere and get transported to legitimize into formal structures. I'm not saying that's the reality, read for yourself, but that's probably the biggest danger, because it then questions the very fundamentals of democracy. Sorry, Minister.
No, that's fine. That's your job, is to add to what I say.
I'm sure you see why we should celebrate our firing.
So, Warren, your question is, in a sense, answered by this as well. But to now add to the point that my colleague has made, South Africa has a very rich history of community mobilizing and mass mobilization, which in different periods during our history served us extremely well, from the Alexandra bus boycott in the 1950s, the potato boycott of farmers in Mpumalanga that Ruth first exposed, to the period in which we grew up in the 70s and 80s politically, and where millions of people were actually involved through structures, whether it's trade unions, women's organizations, youth organizations, civic organizations, and so on. So what should the public do? Organize. Organize. Because fragmented voices don't have the weight that is required. It's organized voices. And that's I'm not saying that as an individual. I'm a trained political activist who received his training, just like my colleague did, in the ANC. So what I'm saying is ANC policy, if you like. It's the ANC ethic of being accountable to the masses and getting the masses involved, not on the basis of false narratives, but on the basis of legitimate knowledge and information that empowers them to be agents of change and empowers them to change their own conditions and their own lives. We also received our training in the Communist Party, by the way, where we say, the masses make history, not individuals. Individuals matter, yes, very important. But it's only when the masses get involved, and we have proof of that in South Africa as well. Sorry about the lesson in politics. Kate, the question of the future of the senior officials, as I said earlier on, they are all highly committed South Africans and public servants, and treat them with respect their professional knowledge, debate with them in a mature and respectful way, and create an environment where open policy discussions can happen. And I'm sure they'll be willing to serve another 10 years for this institution and for South Africa. But each of them will make up their own minds about how they deal with these questions. But for now, they are here. Devalt, sorry, I had to ask you to reformulate your question. We visited the SG because upon landing we were intrigued by this recall from London, and we thought we could make an important contribution, as I outlined earlier on. So between the Director General and myself, we said, hey, let's phone the SG, find out what's going on. So we were not confronted with anything, just for the record. We had a 20-minute conversation, reported to him about our trip and what we were attempting to do, and also reassured him that Mr. Jonas is in South Africa, much to his surprise. And Yeah, I mean, nothing happened there that had any relationship to what happened last night. That's for the record, but he can comment on his discussion. Arabile, do we expect more people to follow us out of the door? Well, we're not walking out of the door voluntarily. And that's a decision that each person must make in their own right, depending on how they feel about the current environment. And Ranjani, your question was, I think, answered more than adequately a moment ago. So, the next 5.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's it. Last. Go ahead, man. Can you go get closer to the mic?
There's one here if you want to use it. We're just testing how flexible you are, you see, and how agile you are.
It's Catherine from the Times newspaper and website. This is a blunt question. Is the Public Investment Corporation funds, the trillions of ordinary South Africans' retirement funds, are they safe now? Because the Deputy Finance Minister has the last say of the PRC, and is it going to be okay now?
Valdi Caroso from TVC News, Minister and Deputy Minister. I'm wondering if you think President Zuma is still fit to be president, and do you think that he is corrupt or merely being manipulated by people who are corrupt?
Good morning, Minister. It's Anton May from Pretoria. I want to add to that question. If you have to vote on a motion of no confidence in President Jacob Zuma now, what would you vote?
Colleagues, can we allow the press conference to proceed, please?
And then following your participation in the meetings with the ratings agencies, do you think that your hard work has been undone following your removal? Do we see another ratings downgrade in the face? Thank you.
Following up on that, Peter Grant from NPR, you said you're still a member of Parliament. You plan on staying there for a period. How will you vote on the no confidence vote? Will the ANC get 50 defections?
You just asked that question.
Well,
you wasted your opportunity. You wasted your opportunity.
How will you vote on the no confidence vote?
Hi, Ministers. Steve from Jacaranda FM News. I just wanted to know from you guys, will you guys be resigning?
Okay, sorry.
Okay, sorry. I wanted to know, will you be resigning as MPs? What do you think the future holds for the ANC come 2019? And do you believe the Guptas have captured Zuma? Good afternoon, Ministers. Just adding on to one of those questions. So as you know, the Moody's rating is next week, and a lot of financial heavyweights like Fitch and Anglo American and Pinewood all said that your axing would be very devastating to South Africa. So what would you think the next step is to try and get us out of the dog box of the investment community?
Good day, Minister. Samuel Skiti from the Sunday Times. You spoke about court cases earlier, Minister. I just want to revisit one of those court cases. The matter in which you are an applicant asking the court for a declarator in the exercise of public power between the relationship of the client and the bank. How important is the outcome of that matter to you? Now that what has happened yesterday, is it still as important as it was when you were minister? And then DM, perhaps flowing from your reaction to this intelligent report.
Intelligent or intelligence?
Intelligence. And all of these other sort of attacks that have taken place against the treasury. Do you believe that there's a family in South Africa that is a national keyword?
Minister John Bailey from ENCA. Waterspan lost their urgent court application this morning to buy a big bank, and you've been accused by them of dragging your feet in this process. So if we can get your comment on that. And then the other question would be, who sent you the comeback SMS?
It's Mary Lisa with Finweek. A lot of the people I know today are really in despair. Do you really think that it's possible to halt or reverse the trend that we've seen over the past 2 years, which I think has already been communicated and voiced by much of the media? Last,
Good afternoon, Ministers.
Something wrong with somebody's arithmetic about 10,
I wanted to ask, yeah, sorry, just behind.
Ah, okay.
I wanted to ask, has firstly the President given you the decency to call you and talk to you about the decision? And second of all, what has your relationship been with the President since you've come into the position of Finance Minister? Do you communicate with him, and have you interacted with him on a regular basis regarding all the trips that you do and how your department is run? Thank you.
Okay, over to the Minister.
Is ANN 7 here? So we're going to give them a special slot for a question, because they have a lot to say with so-called independent analysts. So, and they have a lot to say when they want to attack us and malign us and try to disgrace us. So where's ANN 7? Any question? No, this is very fair. This is very fair. Would you like to be the subject of daily and nightly attacks? This is very fair. All we're saying, there shouldn't be any booing, so I agree with that. All I'm saying is that, you see, why must we constantly deal with people who are never seen in the public domain? Never. But they mastermind all these attacks on family, make false accusations, pay somebody called Bell Pottinger. You know them? Yes. Eh? PR firms are hired, millions of rands are spent. To do what? To do what? To malign democratic institutions of South Africa. But why don't they come out face to face? Let's have a debate face to face. Anyway, let me get back to the questions. You see, that's fair. That's fair. Because you can't, have fake news and fake Twitter accounts and all of that stuff, attacking family members who have nothing to do with the Treasury. You want to attack the two of us? Go ahead. Go ahead. Why you attack family members? Would all of you, whether you're in the media or anywhere else, like that to happen? That's not fair play. Play fair. And be open and be transparent. We are an open democracy in South Africa. We've got nothing to hide. But of course, I'm sure we'll hear a mouthful pretty soon. PIC funds, are they safe? Let's just set the record straight. Firstly, the PIC funds, a PIC is what you call an asset manager. It invests funds on behalf of the Government Employees Pension Fund. The Government Employees Pension Fund has a board, that's 50% employees and 50%, let's call it government appointed. But in terms of the legislation that the GEPF, that's what it's known, is operating by, government is the final guarantor. So if there's any actuarial problem, any, let's call it shortage of funds, it's the fiscus that must ultimately.
All right, we seem to have lost that feed there, but really I think the All right, I'm just being told that it is back. Let's go back now to former Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan and his deputy in Claire BC Jonas briefing the media.
Fiscus that must stand as guarantor and foot the bill if there's any shortage of funds in that regard. And that's why, as the Treasury has to keep a careful eye on what's going on there. Secondly, it is not written anywhere in law that the Deputy Minister chairs the board of the PIC. Had I stayed in this job a little bit longer, we were both agreed that we need to get an independent chairperson for the board of the PIC, like any board anywhere in the commercial world, so that there's no political influence in the way the PIC is run. And that's a recommendation I'll make to Minister Gigaba as well, that perhaps he wants to consider that as we go forward. So the team that we have at the PIC is an extremely professional and competent team. The Deputy Minister has worked a lot more closely with them, so if he wants to comment a little later, he's quite welcome to do so. The President and the questions that were asked about that, I don't think it's for me to comment on right now. That should be addressed to the right quarter. There are 2 or 3 questions on the motion of no confidence. I think I'll be guided by my conscience when and if that actually happens, and hopefully do the right thing, whatever that might be. So you can come back here in a short while and ask me the question again. Have the work we've done with the ratings agencies been undone? No, I don't think so. And I don't think any South African would want the good record that we've established with labour and the business sector and the kind of confidence that we've tried to generate over the last 18 months or so post 9/12 must be undone in any way. Because any undoing of that confidence, any decline in the rating status of the country is going to hurt ordinary South Africans. And ordinary South Africans shouldn't pay the price for any nonsense created elsewhere. So all of us actually should work towards ensuring that the ratings remains within the investment grade side, so that all South Africans can be rest assured that the best is being done for them, and certainly the Treasury staff are very committed to that. What's the future for the ANC in 2019? Well, I think a lot of ANC senior people will be concerned that the trend that was observed in the local government elections is a trend that needs to be reversed, is a trend that should not indicate decline any further. And because the ANC is still, I believe, an organization that has, by and large, the interests of all South Africans at heart and is based on very sound principles, it is the organization, if it can get its act right, that should continue to lead the democratic government that we have in South Africa. But it will, and there are many who say this, including many senior people, trust in a political party is earned. You don't have it by right. You do the right things, you earn the trust. If you do the wrong things, you lose trust. And certainly there are many who would want to make sure that the kind of trust that the ANC has had for a very long period of time, over 100 years, is something that we can regain in order that 2019 goes the ANC's way. But hard work needs to be done to actually achieve that. The Guptas and their influence on the President, again, that's for you to judge. It's not for us to comment. In the kind of wider context that the Deputy Minister was actually indicating. And I mean, if there are any questions about the President, please direct them to the Presidency, because that's the best place to have them answered. Moody's next week and out of the dog box. I don't think we're quite in the dog box. I think there are a lot of good things that are happening in South Africa. The Rand until yesterday was still the best performing currency amongst emerging markets. The growth dynamic in emerging markets is very positive. There are sort of green shoots that can be seen in the global economy and that was a conversation when we attended the G20 meeting recently. But it's up to us as South Africans and the different constituencies that we're trying to bring together to inspire confidence in our economy, firstly. Secondly, demonstrate that we're capable of bringing about some of the reforms, for example, good governance in SOCs. And thirdly, convince people that the so-called political noise in South Africa is normal political noise in any society, and the kind of political competition that we're going to see within the ANC is competition that you see in any political party as well. But we must be able to tell the story in a convincing way, so people believe that we are heading in the right direction and that the trajectory that we are pursuing is correct. I believe we have a very strong case to remain investment grade unless we shoot ourselves in the foot, and I hope that we don't. Sabelo had asked a question of the Deputy Minister, so he'll come back to that in a moment. How important is the Oak Bay court case? I think it's important to have, on issues like the ones that the court was considering, clarity, so that we have a firm policy basis, in this case decided by a court of law, so that we don't have any haggling like this for the future. I'm very fortunate now I don't have to worry about whether a bank is interfering or not, and we'll see what happens as far as the judgment is concerned, but that clarity I think is quite crucial. Dragging of feet in respect of Habib, well, what I want to do is take you for a walk and show you I don't drag my feet. Okay, I might even beat you when walking. So, there's no dragging of feet, but there are processes to be followed. Banks are important institutions, and sometimes we forget the simple facts of life about a bank. A bank collects deposits from customers, and it lends out that money that it collects in the form of deposits. And when you want to go and get your cash from a bank that you've actually deposited, the bank must be able to give you back that cash. At the same time, the shareholders of the bank will want to make sure that it makes a certain amount of legitimate profit. So there's three things here. It's the person that you lend money to who must have the ability to pay back. It's the shareholder who must be able to extract a percentage of profit. And it's the depositor who must get a certain amount of interest on the one hand, but also have the assurance that the money is going to be repaid if and when that money is actually required. Secondly, I think 2008 and 9 taught us some very important lessons about banks. That if banks do not have substantial shareholders, and by substantial I mean shareholders who can put in the cash to make sure that the bank has the right kind of liquidity and capital that needs to be held, then banks can find themselves in trouble, like Lehman Brothers did, or Bear Stearns did, and many, or even RBS, the Royal Bank of Scotland, which is owned by the British government today. Right? It is still, after all this time, hasn't worked its way out of the difficulties that it fell into at that particular point in time. So the banking regulator has to ensure that these questions are answered, and they're answered with the appropriate level of information, and that there's a level of comfort with the answers and the proof that is actually provided. Now, the banking regulator has reached a certain point in their decision-making process, and my successor will then have to apply his mind to this issue when he enters the doors of this place. The comeback SMS. The comeback SMS came from the presidency. Despair and can be reversed. Look, countries all over the world will get into modes where they have one kind of difficulty or the other. South Africans, I think, are optimistic by nature. And I'm sure that we will work our way out of this. The key is let's work together to make South Africa a better place for all of us. The relationship between, don't get distracted, because this is the last two statements we're going to make now and then close up. And thanks to the colleagues behind me for joining us. The relationship between ourselves and myself and the President, I know the President from 1974. That's when the President and about 10 others were released from Robben Island. And we were amongst the young activists who worked with the President at the time. And when he's got relaxed and has the time, he'll share with you the manner in which we helped him and many other ex-Robben Islanders and helped him to leave the country as well in 1976. Secondly, we've had no tension between us, as far as I'm concerned. And as far as the matters related to the budget are concerned, there's always been very constructive engagements between himself, and not just myself, but the Treasury team broadly as well. So I hope to visit him soon and have a cup of tea and have a chat about the world and the various things that we might have a mutual interest in. Deputy Minister, there was that one question for you, and anything else you want to add?
Sabelo, I think that read what's happening and answer yourself. I think the signs are all there. I mean, again, I mean, we might want to avoid it. The reality is that we are at a crossroad as a country. That's the point I was making. And some of the issues that we are talking about are linked to that fact. I think I must thank you. Should I take that? Usurp that power?
Yeah, please do.
Ministers of Finance and two vulnerable.
You know, coup d'etats are dangerous, but please go ahead.
Thank you very much for participating in this press briefing. We thought it's important that we just explain some of the factors that were not clear in different media houses. Some of them were deliberately distorted. We thought it's important that we put across our views and positions on a number of issues that the Minister has outlined. Thank you very much for participating.
Thank you very much.
Certainly in the words of the Deputy Finance Minister, or now the former Deputy Finance Minister, we've witnessed history. We certainly have over the last few hours, witnessing history not only with that cabinet reshuffle, but also just that huge backlash to the sacking of the Finance Minister. So hearing there really, Francis, from both the Finance Minister and the Deputy Finance Minister, it was really about allaying the fears of the public, I think, and Minister Gordhan speaking on mass mobilization, that all South Africans need to stand together now to ensure that the country remains stable in what we've seen. He also spoke of how he addressed his Treasury staff as their outgoing boss, as if I can call him that, to say that they are committed, his staff are committed to doing their utmost best to continuing the legacy and of the Treasury, of the Office of the Treasury. And interestingly enough, he said that when that space between being called back home and coming back home, he did manage, him and his team, to meet with some investors while overseas. And one of the questions was, will that work be undone? And I think that's what everybody's looking at now. Everyone's looking at the markets. Everybody's saying, will the work that we've done, that we've put in place to stabilize things and avoid downgrades, will that all be undone now?
Well, I think this is an unprecedented press briefing. You saw visuals from inside the venue that members of Save SA, as well as Vavi, head of the new Trade Union Federation, a lot of people arriving in support, and the Deputy Finance Minister earlier given a standing ovation. Also ANN7 given a very hard time by the Minister. And I think what we've seen today is unprecedented criticism of the President, bordering on open revolt. So you said what Gordhan said, and just to add to that, that he said categorically there was no secret meeting, but we'll give you some more details. Let's hear what Zwelinzima Vavi is saying right now.
The staff here in the Treasury are in pain. They can't believe that in the South Africa they have had to build. This was to be possible. It has been a very long, painful journey of a total capture of every institution of our democracy. And this, for them, is the final stop. They have achieved what they could have not imagined that they will be able to achieve. To the staff, we can only say, hold on there. Don't let them have a blank check in front of their desk. Resist. Tell us one way or another of whatever shenanigans they are going to be implementing when they come over today. Stop corruption. Don't collaborate with crime. This is a darkest hour in the history of South Africa, but we can promise you one thing. Tomorrow is going to be better than yesterday. Zuma and his thugs will not have the last say. Thank you. The people of this country will have the last say. It doesn't matter how long it will take, but they are going to be on their way out very soon, or sooner than they know. Hold on into your positions. Don't let them loot this country in your presence. We disagreed with you on policy so many times. We have marched outside your buildings from the trade union point of view. But we know one thing that we give to you. You are professionals, you are uncorruptible, you are not the looters. And for that, we want to defend you moving forward. So don't despair. Don't you despair even at this moment. Carry on serving this country with everything that you have. Don't collaborate with corruption. We are outside. We are inviting the media to go outside. Our people have now surrounded this building symbolically to stop Kikaba and Buthelezi from coming over today. At lunchtime, we will march to the union buildings, and we are calling on every South African with a conscience. Join us, save our country. This is not a passing picket. We have now started a movement of all of these people you see, and we will stop at nothing that is legal, that is within our constitution, to stop these political hyenas from destroying the future of our children.
We are here to say, remember as a nation the words of our great leader Nelson Mandela, that in the life of every nation there comes a time when you decide whether to fight or submit. South Africans have to make a decision today as to whether they are going to succumb and submit to the forces of corruption or they are going to stand up and fight. This is not a fight. This is not a fight that is a fight of treasury. This is a fight for the very sovereignty of our nation. Yes. The ANC leadership says, we didn't know where these names came from. It begs the question, where did the names come from? Where did the names come from, therefore? As a democratic country, we elected a political party to run our country, and that's the African National Congress. Who then takes decisions behind it, even when it says no, and proceeds to remove a competent, capable, patriotic Minister of Finance and his deputy, leaders that have demonstrated incredible integrity and honesty, leaders that have taken immense pain and suffering and humiliation, all because they were determined to ensure that the coffers of the state are protected. ANC7 is running a program today. They say Mr. Clean has been elected to take over the treasury in Malusi Giga. Don't be fooled. The crisis in state-owned enterprises started during his time as the Minister of Public Enterprises. The State of Capture report highlights all the shenanigans that happened at Transnet during his tenure. Now it will become shenanigans across the spectrum of state-owned enterprises and everywhere where there are finances to be managed. This country has to stand up and fight against this. This is not just a fight against corruption. This is a fight in defense of our very sovereignty. The many leaders who fought, laid down their lives, gave up their youth, sacrificed their careers, and gave up everything, delivered a democracy. It is now upon us to do the same. Be prepared to sacrifice and give up everything to defend that democracy and ensure that South Africa and its commitment to the poor remains. Why should the poor worry about whether social grants are going to be paid or not at the beginning of this year? Why should the poor worry that the schools that they're intended to build, if there are 3 schools to be built, only 1 will be built? Where does the rest of the money go? Why should the poor worry that where government has created and has built fantastic clinic infrastructure across the board, when the doctor says this is the kind of medication that you must get when they go to the, when they go to the dispensary, the medication is not there because somebody has taken it to sell it for money? This is humiliating to the poor. This is abuse to the poor. All of us as South Africans, irrespective of our political beliefs, irrespective of our
All right, a technical problem. We seem to have lost sound, and we'll take you back inside that briefing, which started out as the outgoing members of Treasury, the outgoing Finance Minister, Pravin Gordhan, and his deputy, SABC Jonas, speaking to the press and members of the Treasury as well. But it's become broader. We saw Zwelenzima Vavi arrive, the head of the new Trade Union Federation, the former head of Trade Union Federation, COSATU, that of course was in the tripartite alliance, and he started speaking out against the ANC. He's now basically, if you agree with me, Natasha, calling for mass mobilization, open revolt, calling on South Africans to join the members outside there. You can see who will be marching to the union buildings. And we were listening to Sipho Patiana, the leader of SABC, chairman, a director at Anglo Gold, a businessman who has been very outspoken in recent months about the president and some unprecedented criticism today from these former outgoing high-ranking officials. Pravin Gordhan saying things like he hoped South Africans would show that the country is not for sale, that their souls are not for sale. He was scathing about the attacks that he says he and his deputy have been subjected to in recent days. Their integrity called into question, their reputations, he said, sold for an agenda. He said that intelligence report, he spoke of it as something manipulated to achieve an end. So really, in a sense, fighting back to what he's outlined as something of an onslaught that Treasury has faced. But he did say that despite what has happened, they will be professional and they will be meeting Malusi Gigaba, the incoming finance minister, on Monday. Just some unprecedented things as well. A standing ovation for BC Jonas.
Yes, for both of them. And I think Zwelinzima Vavi echoing what BC Jonas and Minister Gordhan were both saying, that there needs to be this mass mobilization of South Africans to come together, join forces, and not let this continued taking over continue, this continued sort of manipulation of the state and Treasury. And interestingly, what we heard from Minister Gordhan saying that about that dubious report that came out against him and his deputy, we've now heard not only from the likes of Cyril Ramaphosa now saying that they have found that report absolutely deplorable, and the basis or using that report as the basis for sacking the minister is deplorable.
Yeah, so we've had 2 of the top 6 speaking out today. Let's hear a little bit more from outgoing Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan.
A diverse society like ours can promote non-racialism, can advance non-sexism, and build democratic institutions. Remember, we're only 23 years old as a country, and others are 230 years old, and they're still having difficulties with their institutions. So hopefully all of this passes, and the newer generation of political office bearers will do their bit and make their contribution to making South Africa a better place.
Minister, is there a sense of betrayal that you feel, given the kind of rapport that you have with the president, and taking into account the fact that you were asked into this ministry, and on the day that you leave, you said there was no phone call, there was no SMS. What does that say? What does that do for you?
That's the prerogative of the head of state. So we must accept things as they are. And I do want to emphasize that I didn't apply for this job. I was asked to do it at a time when, in the view of the ANC and the president, they required my services in order to contribute towards stability. So at least I can say with a very clear conscience, I have contributed, as has the Deputy Minister and the management at the Treasury, to a year of relative stability, and created conditions where there's confidence in our economy. Now, it's
all right, thanking ENCA for those visuals. We had a technical problem. And just a bit more of a recap. You were talking about what Zwelinzima Vavi said, Trade Union Federation leader. He's saying that really the state has been captured. So he is explicitly stating that, saying tomorrow will be better than yesterday, though, because the people of this country will have the last say, calling for South Africans to join that march to the union buildings.
Yeah, well, earlier our reporter Griselda Lewis spoke to Jesse Duarte. Here's a look at some of that reaction.
We raised our concerns with the president on Monday, but at the same time, we must respect the right of the president to make choices about a cabinet that he leads, a program for the country that he leads. And I believe that whilst we had, even last night, some of the members of the top 6 expressed views of unhappiness. That is entirely correct. They have a right to do so. But right now, the more important thing to do is to unite behind this decision and take it forward. What I understood from the president was, he said, I know that my tradition, and he brought this tradition into the ANC, of consulting on every name. It didn't exist before. The Secretary General of the ANC then used to be invited to sit in, but wasn't part of making any decision. It's President Zuma who started the tradition of actually bringing in the leadership and discussing with the leadership who should be in the cabinet and so on. This time he said, I've made a decision only to provide you with a list of names that I have chosen. It is not my tradition. I normally consult you, but this time around, I'm informing you. That did create a little bit of unhappiness. It will pass, I hope. And I think that if we dwell on that, we're not going to see the big picture. And right now, we're calling on South Africans not to dwell on the negativity. Can we put ourselves behind this leadership who are good people, who will take our country forward and who will, in fact, begin to implement transformation. I hope that the court will this time understand that there is a separation of powers between the executive authority of the president and their right to make rulings. We were not expecting the Democratic Alliance to jump up with joy. We're not expecting the EFF to jump up with joy. Anything that we do as the ANC that puts the country forward and will suggest transformation is negative for counter-revolutionaries. Mmusi Maimane is a counter-revolutionary. He cannot deny that. He supports a woman who speaks very well of colonialism, even though colonialism ravaged our country, broke the backs of our people, stole the land from the people, and imposed poverty on the people. That's who Mmusi Maimane is leading. Julius Malema will do anything that opposes the ANC, and he has shown that backbone because he's gone to bed with people like Mmusi Maimane who are completely without any integrity. So we're not expecting them to jump with joy.
JC Duarte there, another of the top six who have spoken out quite harshly against this cabinet reshuffle and the sacking of the finance minister.
Yeah, so it's interesting because in earlier reports earlier this week, she was alleged to be part of the top six grouping that didn't mind the president's plans to sack Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan. But even JC Duarte admitting that given the full reshuffle, she and others were unhappy, the president himself breaking with his own tradition, she says, of consulting with members. She is, however, trying to focus on the positive. But we have heard from other top six members today, Gordhan saying he felt jittery, uncomfortable with the president's decision and the way in which it was done. And Cyril Ramaphosa, the deputy president, reportedly saying that it was unacceptable, the firing of the finance minister.
Yeah, and President or Cyril Ramaphosa really saying that President Zuma's sacking of the finance minister was based on a frivolous intelligence report and that he was removed without basis and that the removal of Gordhan is greatly unacceptable. He was also saying that he told the president that they were not happy with the cabinet reshuffle. He said that the party, interestingly, was not consulted on that reshuffle, which is echoing the sentiments of Gordhan, saying that they were not consulted on that reshuffle, that they were merely just given a ready-made list.
The president has effected his cabinet reshuffle. Before doing so, he met the ANC officials. It was just a process of informing us of his decision. It was not a consultation because he came with a ready-made list. And I raised my concern and objection on the removal of the Minister of Finance, largely because he was being removed based on an intelligence report that I believe had unsubstantiated allegations about the Minister of Finance and his deputy going to London to mobilize financial markets against our country. Now that I find totally, totally unacceptable that a person who has served our country with such distinction would do something like that. And it reminded me of my own situation in 2001, when there was an intelligence report that said that I was involved in a plot to overthrow the government.